Hi, I'm Elma Crystal and this is The New Mind. Today's guest is Scott Poulter, who is currently running several businesses. I'll name them. One is a community interest project called the Man Cave UK. We also have the Lodge and Lads app, Lads with a Z. But before we go there, we need to understand more about those projects that you run, but we need to know your story first.
Of course.
So tell me a little bit about the projects, and then once you've done that, we're going to go back before we come forward.
Okay.
So tell me about Man Cave UK, the Lodge, and Lads app.
Okay, so I'll start with the Man Cave. So the Man Cave UK is a men's mental health support group that is basically designed to give men who are suffering with their mental health or facing several mental health challenges a safe, non-judgmental space for them to open up. It's basically to aim to reduce male suicide. Mm-hmm. So it's basically a suicide prevention platform / support group. And the Lodge is going to be exactly the same, but for women. Amazing.
So before we talk about Lads, the Man Cave is rapidly growing.
Yes.
Continuing to grow.
Yep.
And explain a little bit about what happens, because it's not just a place people can go. Like, you can have quite a lot of people in these meetings, can't you? So you are in several different places. Where are you at the moment?
So we founded and we started off in Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
We're now in Bicester, Bedford, Northampton, and we are just about to open up in Aylesbury and potentially Brackley as well.
Wow. So there's lots of these different groups. And how many do you averagely get attend a group?
Milton Keynes averages about 50 to 60 a week.
Yeah.
Face to face. Northampton is sat around 40.
Yes.
Bedford around 20 to 25.
So we're talking big numbers.
Yeah. In total, I think our averaging anywhere between 110 and 125. Our record week so far is 132 men.
That's phenomenal.
It is good because it's not the same 130 men. You know, some will use it 1 week on, 1 week off. Some will come every week. We're always getting newcomers. Like this week that's just gone, we only had, it's still incredible. It's 105 men, you know, that came to the meeting, or one of the meetings, but we had 16 new brave men who had either seen what we'd done on socials or knew someone that had gone through, you know, the Man Cave and had a good experience with it. And we're always seeing new faces. So it's the community itself is probably sat around 500 men right now in just over a year.
And tell me how that really took traction, because I can't imagine that, you know, I mean, although it's community interest, it's not easy to build those numbers in real life. I mean, you know, it's easier perhaps on social media to gather that interest, but in real life, practical terms, it's quite hard to do that. So what's been the draw? Because these are men from all different walks of life. It's not like just a particular type of man, is it?
No, well, we see people with so many different backgrounds, different stories.
Yeah.
You know, we're open to not just one specific part of mental health. It's all mental health, which I think is one of the main reasons why we do get large numbers, because I'm from a recovery background, and when I went to my meetings, it was only to talk about drug and alcohol addiction.
Yes.
Where now you're talking about mental health, which drugs, alcohol, bereavement, stress, financial, PTSD, health problem, anything can affect your mental health.
Yeah.
We are there to support you through that.
Yes.
So I think that is one of the main drivers, because it's not specific to one challenge, so to speak. So I think that's one of the main reasons. And I think the other one is the people that come. They're giving men out there who are suffering the confidence, well, if they can do it, because we are just normal lads.
Yeah.
You know, we're normal people who...
Much like yourself.
Exactly. Just like, you know, I'm just a normal guy.
Yeah.
Who, when people meet me, wouldn't necessarily know or think about my past, my story, or the things that I even go through day to day.
Yeah.
And it's me saying that out loud and giving people the courage to come in, and then they do it, and then it's that butterfly effect.
Yeah.
It just keeps, you know, and then you see on socials large groups of people getting together, and we've got a bit of a tagline, hashtag more than just a meeting.
Yeah.
Because we don't just meet. We do cold water together. We do breathwork events. We go out for curry nights. We go and meet for coffee. We go for walks. It's not, the meeting is just the one part of the week that brings us all together in that one place. But then everything else.
I'm kind of glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's easy to assume that it's a community centre. You all get together once a week, have a little bit of a chat, and that's it. But there's so much more to it than that. It's a really supportive environment, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I want to kind of say, because I think from what I know, from someone I know that did actually do breathwork facilitation thing at your, you know, he did say it wasn't just the kind of guys that are more in touch with their emotions that turn up. Let's say that you've said the word lads there.
Yeah.
He said there were real lads there.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just for people that are used to talking about feelings.
No.
This is for all men.
All men.
And then you're replicating that with the lodge for women.
Yes.
And then there's Lads app.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about that.
So the Lads app is basically something that I wanted to, or have been thinking about for probably the last couple of years, just before I got into my recovery journey. And it has taken a few shapes since that point. But it was the man cave that really kind of gave me the drive to do this on a more nationwide scale.
Yeah.
Because so I run the Milton Keynes meeting. You know, I've got community leaders who run the other meetings. And over the last year, the most common question I got asked is, you know, do you know a good therapist? That is probably the most common question.
Yeah.
You know, how did you get into cold water? What are the benefits of cold water? You know, what are your symptoms of depression? And I was like, when I got into recovery, because when I say recovery journey 2 years ago, that's kind of when I actually got clean and stay clean. But I've been doing, you know, trying to get clean since 2015.
Yeah.
And I'd have to go on this website for that therapist, this website to understand this. So the Lads app is basically a centralized hub that you can download, and it has everything on there. It's going to have Find Your Tribe, which is a man cave, Andy's man club, an NA meeting, an AA meeting. It's going to have education. It's going to have content, podcasts. It's going to have relatable stories, sober trackers, journals, gratitude. It's going to be a centralized hub, because the other thing right now with the man cave is that, yes, we're seeing so many men on a weekly basis who are taking that first step and being brave and not yet sharing, but they're listening, they're identifying, they're building connections. There are so many men out there who aren't.
Yes.
And it's reaching those people with the Lads app.
Yeah.
That if they don't ever take that step, they can still heal and they can still get better.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So that's the kind of passion behind it.
It's really, you've mentioned your recovery journey.
Yep.
It feels like this, you know, you're a bit of an entrepreneur anyway, but you're using that entrepreneurial skill to be able to pay forward what you've been through.
Yeah.
And to be able to, not necessarily, and I know you're really keen on saying this, especially with the Man Cave UK, that, you know, you don't want to be, it's not about you, it's about them.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about it because it leads us really into your journey, but it also tells us a lot about how you can pay it forward. And these three things, I know you're just going into the lodge with the women and similar idea, but you really are taking something that sounds like, from what I've heard, a very, very dark place, and just shining a big light so that you can make all of it make sense and be worthwhile, I guess, that pain.
Absolutely. Yeah, my I don't think my journey is darker than anyone else's, but we have a saying in the Man Cave. So we, you know, we call it the preamble, and I read out something at the beginning, and one of the sayings is, my pain is my pain and your pain is yours.
Yes.
Please don't feel someone else's journey is worse, therefore invalidating what you are going through.
Really
what you
important.
are feeling is real.
Yeah.
You can tell how many times I've read that out. I remember it. And, you know, that's the thing I always want to get people to understand. Yeah, my journey took me to trying to hang myself. It took me to walking the streets in drug-induced psychosis. I've been sectioned. But my story is no worse or better than anyone else's, you know, and it's shining a light on our shadows and knowing to learn to sit with them and understand them and understand why they're there and the reasons why they act and behave the way they do, and know that it can get better, and you can go from being that person to now this person. And that's what the Man Cave is all about. That's what my mission is all about, because by shining a light on it will take you further away from attempting to take your own life. And it's a suicide prevention tool without ever mentioning the word suicide.
Well, you said that right at the beginning. Yeah. I was interested because I know that that's not like a tagline or anything like that. That's just your desire for this to be a suicide. Without it being about that, the ultimate goal is that there are people out there that come along to these meetings or that come across your app or even come across you and go, oh, maybe that isn't the only option.
No.
And I know... You know, we know that suicide is the biggest killer in men under 35.
12 a day.
It's crazy. So whatever you're doing right now, because of your own experience, is powerful and important. And it's not about leaving a legacy as such for you, but I think it will anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to know that even if that's not the goal, you know, it's not, like you say, it's not about you.
No.
Ultimately, that is what you'll do. And you just can't possibly put a number on how many people will not take their own life. You'll never know that.
It's not something that you can, you can't, what's the word? You can't collect that kind of data. You know, we try and collect as much data as possible. And I guess the good thing, you know, through the numbers, we do understand what percentage is here for this and what percentage is here for that. But I always say to people, it really doesn't matter why you're here, because it's the same water, different cups.
Yes.
And your situation that led you here, it doesn't matter. You're here.
Yeah.
What you're feeling is what we want to talk about and what we want to hear, because it's getting the feelings off your chest that releases the burden, the weight. Telling people what you went through doesn't so much.
Yeah.
And we had that a lot in the Man Cave in the beginning, people telling us their situations but not telling us how they felt. So then me and the committee sat down and we were like, we need to get these guys talking more about what's going on inside here. And we kind of rewired, again, saying it without saying it, planting that seed. Tell us how you're feeling rather than what the situation is. And it's and that's why it's about them. It's not, yes, I started it, yes, I founded it, but they are the true heroes, the warriors that are turning up. And actually, I know how hard it is to get that off your chest.
Well,
as
they're
a
being
man.
vulnerable. I mean,
vulnerability
as
is,
a man, like you said. I mean, I don't want to take away from the women that are vulnerable, but I guess it's in society seen as easier to be vulnerable as a woman because we're allowed to be. And I think we're starting to catch up a little bit with men, but there's still a long way to go. Yeah. And also, the way that mental health is generally dealt with, even on social media and in the apps and so on and so forth, it's often very generic. And what you've said there is really important, because we don't want to talk about the words and we don't want to necessarily always look at labels. It's more about how you feel inside, and that vulnerability, authenticity, which we can all talk about, but it's harder to actually do. If you're cultivating a safe space for that to happen, that not only is important, but it's culturally changing things, because these men are talking to their brothers or their friends in a slightly different way and their children in a slightly different way. That knock-on effect
goes back to the butterfly effect.
Yeah, it does. So that's why it's so powerful. It's not just like you said, it's not just about the meeting, it's not just about the curry club, it's not just about the walking. It's changing a narrative and an unconscious bias, which you might not see for another 20 years fully in effect.
Yeah, of course. I think, what you just said then. So the underlying, if I could say the one reason why it's working is one word: connection.
Yeah.
Now, when we go for curry nights, and we've had 3, I think, that I've been able to make it to. And every time I sit there, I take it all in and I say to the boys, this is where the work is done.
Yeah.
The work isn't done in the meetings.
Yeah.
That's where we get brought together.
Yeah.
The work, if any work is being done at the meeting, it's before and after.
Yes.
When you're connecting, you're
Yeah.
identifying with that one guy. Oh, he went through X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And you float over and you gravitate and you connect. And then that relationship forms.
Yeah.
And then on the curry nights where you're just being yourselves, because what will you do? You get to then trust that person
Yeah.
from the meeting. You build a relationship. And then what happens at the curry night? You trust that person to open up.
Yeah.
And it's then and there that the work is being done. It's not at the meetings. Don't get me wrong, an element, I don't want to take away what we do.
Yeah.
Because it's very important, and it is the, having that safe place.
It's the foundation.
It's the foundation, yeah. But the real subconscious work, because I think it's conscious, you come there to listen, to share.
Yeah.
But at the curry nights, at the coffees, at the walk and talks, at all these other things that we do, that's where,
That's
takes
powerful.
place. Yeah.
I keep using that word, and I'm going to say something really important here, which is over the last few years, I say since the 80s, we've seen community dwindle a lot. It started off with, a lot of the coal mines closing down and the factories closing down, more so in the north. But we saw that those communities started to be affected by those closures. And then we move into the 90s. And again, we started to see youth clubs being shut down and services being shut down. And community was getting less and less and less. And then, especially over the last few years with COVID and everything else, we've seen so many businesses be gone and so many sort of ways of connecting going. You mentioned the word connection, which means that people became more isolated and got used to that.
Yeah.
What I feel like you've just said is you've just started to create a community again, a community of people that would not necessarily meet in normal circumstances.
Yeah.
And that is why, from every level, whether we're talking about the fact that it's looking after the mental health of men and allowing that foundation, that safe space, but it's also the community, the connection, the knock-on effect, the changing the unconscious bias as they're talking to their friends outside of, you don't have to have mental health issues to be a bit suppressed. So if you've gone to a meeting and then you've got a best mate that for all intents and purposes seems very happy in his life, it doesn't mean that he's completely comfortable being vulnerable. So again, it's just changing that. That's big.
It is, and I think that the more that, because we're only a year old,
Yeah.
and we're learning a lot along the way, and one of the things that we're now really trying to, spread the message is, what we noticed was a lot of men came to us when they were down.
Yeah.
And then when they felt better, they didn't come.
Yeah.
And that's okay if that's what you want to do. We're always here if you need us. It's the men who we've seen the most insane progress in that 1 year, because before we started shooting, we had one guy turn up with a suicide note in his pocket. He was ready, and right now I just had to write a testimonial for him about his journey, and whilst I was writing it, the insane progress where he is now to where he was, but the reason why he's there is because of the consistency. Yes, he didn't just turn up when he was down. Yeah. He turned up when he was good, because again, in our preamble, we say, if you're struggling, or to celebrate the wins, or to share solutions on how you cope. It's not just about coming because you might be depressed, or you're feeling anxious, or someone in your life has just passed away and you're going through bereavement. Come and talk to us about the wins. Yeah. Come and talk to us about the celebrations. Yeah. And now we've the regular lads will talk to us about all 3 of those things. And that is part of life. That is part of mental health, the ups and the downs.
And also, we were talking earlier about success and how that's motivational and inspiring for me personally, seeing other people win. So when you're at that meeting at your lowest ebb and you're listening to someone share their wins after maybe going for 6 months, 7 months, that's that little bit of maybe I could be there in 6-7 months.
Exactly.
It's just as beneficial, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's very inspirational to hear someone go, I was at point A, and from coming to the man cave as only one of my tools. Yeah. Because it's just one tool. Yeah. That's all we are, is a tool to use. We are big on other tools like we have our own subgroup of cold water therapy where all the lads, do selfies and throw themselves into freezing cold water. I did it for a while, but no, not for me.
It's not for me either.
Cold showers now, that's as far as it goes. And then they, you know, when they do say about their wins, it inspires the newcomer. And, you know, I do owe a lot of the Man Cave to my experience in 12-step fellowships.
Yes.
I took a lot of good from that experience. It didn't work for me.
No.
But I took what was good about it.
Because there is a lot good about it.
It's an amazing fellowship. I still have friends that are in it today.
And I know that for some of the people that I know that are recovering addicts, like they don't go consistently, maybe every week, but they still show up when they feel they need to. And it's a great place to revisit. But with all the wonderful work you're doing, obviously there is a story, and you say it's no darker than anybody else's. So to preface that, but it is a story all the same. And I know you've been to, well, you said there you tried to hang yourself at one point. So that gives us an intro into the level of darkness. Yeah. Where do you feel your struggles began? Because it's often not when the person starts taking the substance of choice. It goes back way, way, way back.
Nine years old.
Tell me about your story.
So my mum and dad broke up. My mum left. So I don't know the ins and outs of how she left, whether it was get out or whatever. Yeah. And I won't go too deep, because I know my mum will probably watch this, and I don't want to, you know. But they broke up, and she left around Christmas 1997. I was 9. I think back then it was, you know, very, very difficult for me.
What was difficult?
Your mum just left. Mum just walked out. You're 9 years old.
What were you thinking at the time, though?
Well, I guess back then, why? It was just, you know, that, and actually, it came up when we were talking before. The asking questions and never knowing the answer. Yeah. Huge. Why? And never being told. You know, and never knowing exactly why.
Did you ever then think it was anything to do with you? Was there ever that sort of form of, if she's not here, am I good enough?
I think there is always that. Am I good enough? And I think that it would have had a part to play in my self-worth, because I have had a very, you know, I've never valued myself until probably in the last year. Yeah. After I hit that 1 year clean was a huge milestone to say, okay, I can now be proud of myself. So my whole life, I've never really valued myself or had, you know, self-worth. So I think that probably played into it. Yeah. It was hearing certain things was why not from her. Yeah. Stories from my dad. Yeah. And then hearing a different version from her. And then, you know, meeting my dad's new partner, and then hearing a different thing from that. And then never being told the truth, never being able to, you know, process and actually stick with one story. It would always confuse me, and I guess make me always behave a certain way in order to not let people down, so they never left me, basically, I think.
Yes.
You know, I would
so yours was a fear of abandonment?
A fear of abandonment. Oh, it's one of my wounds, yeah. Fear of abandonment is one of my wounds, because later on in life, my dad also did the same. Right. He walked out of my life.
How old were you then?
God, I must have been... He'd done a couple of times, probably late 20s. And then when I got married, he didn't come to my wedding because my mum came. So now I have a great relationship with my mum and zero relationship with my dad. Yeah,
that's tough. Because then you've never been able to, from the inner child's point of view, by the way, you've never been able to, and children self-abandon, so you've never been able to do enough to make them both want to be there at the same time. Yeah. I'm not saying you think that now, but that's the sort
I definitely did when I was 30 at my wedding. I can't please. I can't.
Yes,
I'm not
I can't
good
win
enough.
here. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was only, 7 years ago. So it's relevant, like...
It is, yeah.
In the course of my whole life.
Yeah.
Having all of that wounds and trauma.
And you're having to work out, how do I behave so this person loves me enough or wants to be there for me? How do I behave so this person's happy with me and therefore I'm enough for them? You can't just ever settle into, this is who I am, it's okay for me to be this way. No. And I will be loved regardless. There's a massive... anxiety, I would imagine, around whether you're going to be accepted and loved for who you are without having to work out how to be.
Well, yeah, I've done it my whole life. I've done it all through, my job, my career, my footballing days, even when I went into the army, it was all like I worked out what you wanted me to be, and I'd become that person, and I'd just put that mask on, and then I'd walk into that room, it's that person, I'd put that mask on, and I was just playing 100 different characters for different people, because I knew that if I was that character, I had more of a chance of being accepted. I couldn't be me. I didn't know who me was.
Well, no, because at the early age of 9, you've only just started prefrontal development in the brain anyway. Yeah. So you can't even analyse, really, not very well. You can do some complex thinking, but not a great deal. So we're like little animals at that age. We're adapting to our environment, but it's not normal to have I'm talking about environments as in like psychological environments here. It's not natural to have 6 or 7 different environments that you've got to adapt to. You've got your cave and you've got the territory outside your cave from the primitive point of view. But this little kid is having to work out this environment with dad and the new, female in this environment with mum, this environment with school, this environment in the army, and I know you're older by the time you join the army, but essentially your brain is never in one place. So it's fragmented experience. So with that fragmented experience will come the self-abandonment, because you're learning to please now rather than just be. Going into teenage years then, what did that look like?
Very similar in the terms of how I would act, because that's when my dad's drinking took off.
Right.
So again, I would assess the situation and work out what mood he was in.
Yeah.
And I would then behave a certain way, which I knew would reduce the chances of me getting a slap or being shouted at or anything like that. It was the same with my stepmom as well. We had a very fragile relationship. We didn't get on at all.
Was she a drinker?
No. She had bipolar, but it was undiagnosed. Right. So her moods were up and down and left and right. And again, on the days that we clicked, we actually got on really well. But on the days that we didn't, it just, it wasn't. It was too volatile, way too volatile for someone. We also had moved from Dunstable to Milton Keynes.
So you've got no friends?
Completely new set.
That's
friends,
really
completely
important.
New house, completely everything. We had to start, all over again. And I think that for my dad, it was, I need to get away from what just happened.
Yes.
And he, took the kids with him. And I've got a lot of empathy for my dad. Now that I have been through what I've been through, I do have a lot of empathy for him and for my stepmom as well. But from the eyes of a kid going into his adolescent years, it was difficult. Again, it was just constantly wearing a mask. My stepbrother was very well liked. He was himself. He could be whoever he wanted to be and did not care what the other kids thought. And I was always, I want to be like him. He was a cool kid. He was a skater, and he had, everyone just liked him, and he was funny. So I tried to be more like him one day, and then I was really good at football, where he wasn't into his football. He was into, like you say, his rollerblading and whatnot. So I try and be like him, and then on the football days, I'd be to the point I would literally have different wardrobes for these different.
You were really masking in every single way.
Every single way possible, yeah.
So it's almost like you had different characters that you would become to suit this, what I said, to suit the environment.
Yeah.
You can't just be that linear. No one is, by the way, but I think it's more obvious with you.
Yeah.
I think it's much more obvious with you.
Yeah.
That you're like, I'll dress this way when I'm with these people, this way when I'm doing this. I'll behave like this when my stepmother is going through a difficult time. I'll behave like this when my dad's drunk. I'll be like this for my mum. Where's the space to even learn and grow and play? It's a lot of... I know it might feel quite normal now, but at the time, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It was a lot to go through, because then at school, this is outside of school. At school, it was, I wanted to be the tough boy, or I wanted to be the joker of the class, and Again, it was another identity.
Yeah.
And I guess my whole life I've just had that, and it became second nature. It's not that it wasn't versions of me.
Yeah.
Because through that came, you know, my personality and some good sides of me. So it was never like fake. It was just a way that I knew. It's the only way I knew how to survive.
Well, you said earlier you didn't really know who you were. You didn't have that sense of self.
No.
Or not a very clear sense of self. The only way, it feels like you were probably mirroring other people.
Exactly.
In order to get, yeah.
Because if I'm like you, you'll accept me.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
That's your way, again, because of the abandonment thing.
Yeah.
But then through that, you do learn eventually what your personality is, I guess. But it's just a lot longer of... And you, like you say, they are we all have different... We talked about internal family systems earlier, the parts therapy. We've all got different characters that reside within our head. That we can all wear different hats, and the shadow self, the Carl Jungian theories, the shadow self and all of that stuff. But I also think with you, it's far more profound. And I think it's more damaging, actually, because with the mirroring, there's a sense of, I only know who I am when I see a reflection of myself in you.
Yeah.
And so without that reflection, who am I? So there must be a sense of being lost there as well.
Yeah, I'm not scared to say I've been lost my whole life. I still feel lost now.
Yeah.
I still feel lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you've spent your programming, your neural wiring will be based on the image that you were seeing, say, in your stepbrother or your dad. So now I know who I am when you show me who you are. Finding yourself is not going to be and it feels like, not only was it not an easy journey to get there, and you're still doing that now, 2 years in recovery, it feels like then that the substances or the alcohol or whatever it was that you were using at the time was a way of you escaping the fact that you knew that you were lost. Is that fair? Or the pain that comes with that?
It was definitely, escaping the weight.
Yeah.
The emotional weight that it took to play those characters, I guess.
Yeah.
It was an escape, but the sadness behind knowing that without them I'm very alone.
Yeah.
Because even though I grew up in a house of 6, I felt the loneliest I've ever felt, you know, growing up in that house. But it was also, I could become whoever I wanted to be. I could become this fantasy version of me.
Yeah.
Where none of those, and he didn't care.
So you were escaping the low self-esteem and the pain.
Yeah.
And when you were using and you were becoming the hero of your own story.
Yeah.
Even though it might not have appeared that to anyone else. Yeah. For you, that's how it felt.
In a weird way, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I could just be whoever I wanted to be. And at the beginning, you know, when you first take drugs, you're going out, you're partying, you're with people, that confidence went through the roof, and I just didn't care. Yeah. So it's that finally you can relax. I can relax a little bit and have fun and party, and I fell in love with it. Yeah. I absolutely fell in love with it. It was. What was your drug of choice, or cocaine. Your cocaine? Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I experimented with MDMA pills. I never injected. It's not to say that I don't think that I ever, wouldn't have tried it at some point. I just found my poison, which was cocaine and alcohol. That was the one, if I wasn't going to a rave or, because I did like back then ecstasy and pills and whatnot. But yeah, that's the one I stuck with was cocaine, because it was just so easily accessible, and it was still is. It still is. Even more so, I'd say. Yeah. It's actually ridiculous how accessible. And it just, again, it where ecstasy and MDMA takes a good half an hour to 40 minutes for you to come up. Cocaine. Yeah. The pain goes instantly. Yeah. So yeah, I fell down that trap of, being, I guess I fell in love with being the character of that who was high. Yeah. Because I didn't have to mirror anyone. It could just be him.
Yes.
And he got a lot of attention. He was loud. He was confident. He got a lot of that validation. Early days.
The validation you were seeking from early on from mum and dad and those immediate people around you, that was now instant. It's like a magic trick. Look what I can do. I can become that person that gets that without even trying. And that's what the cocaine did and alcohol. So now you're getting all this validation and you're sort of like, you can take a bit of a step back. I'm not having to copy everybody. This is just so natural. I feel so, well, I guess, not only good in yourself, but you're achieving something. Not in real terms, but to you it must have felt like it's like a cheat and nobody knows, although everyone knows. Yeah. But in your head, nobody knows that I've got all this anxiety. Nobody knows that I'm having to mirror everyone to find out who I am. Nobody knows that I'm feeling abandoned. Nobody can see any of that. This is awesome. Where does it lead though? Like what started off as partying and confidence, where did it go?
So I started probably, really getting into it 18, 19, 25 when my partner at the time fell pregnant. We met again. I come from a recruitment background. It's a work hard, play hard. The companies that I used to work at, well, there was one, we were like a family. It was, we'd done everything together, and I'd met some amazing friends there who are still friends to this day. Again, one of them is in recovery. Yeah. The other one passed away from drugs. Wow. But there was 3 of us. But back then it was like, again, we worked hard, we play hard. And it was a situation that I met my ex-wife through that kind of scene. And then she fell pregnant. And
very quickly she fell pregnant, and then that's the change, because it was like I needed to grow up, but I didn't want to. Wow. I knew I needed to give up the drugs, but I didn't want to. I resented my situation, which fueled me wanting to escape my situation. And then I would try to, not do it as often, or, make sure that I was a good boyfriend and get the permission to go out, but which she'd give me, but then I just completely took the piss. Yeah. I didn't know when to stop. I could not control it. I had no off button. And that's when it became apparent that I had, somewhat of an issue. I always knew I had an issue, I think, deep down, because I had problems around 20. Yeah. That's why I ran off to the army. So before you meet the mother of your child, you're partying hard. Yeah. To pause that there, that triggers the overwhelming responsibility of parenthood, triggers the desire to escape. Yeah. You mentioned there that you've escaped before into the military. 20 is really young, by the way. I mean, these boys that get recruited by the army are 17 and
it's crazy. You're not ready for that. Yeah.
No, I'm not a fan of that age.
That's a different podcast.
That's a whole different podcast. I'm not going there now, but I always just throw that in, like, so young.
Absolutely.
But 20 years old, you go to the army.
Yeah. Didn't last long.
And also, the army has got a terrible drink culture.
So I found out that I had a really bad drinking problem in the army.
Yes, I was going to say that's
because it was Monday to Friday, and then it was at the weekend. You went to the NAFI, and it was just
and it's encouraged.
Yeah,
supported.
Yeah, out in Newcastle, because I trained up in Carrington, and I quickly found out I had a drink problem there.
Yeah, and also all the lost boys are there. So the lost boys end up in the army, and that means that it's actually not only encouraged, but you're all supporting each other through this really maladaptive way of self-soothing. So you're getting the community that you're actually providing now. Yeah. However, that community is all maladaptive and they're all escaping their reality. So how long were you in the army for?
6 months. I just done basic training. Right. And what I found was, apart from kind of that culture of drinking and whatnot, I wasn't using drugs because I couldn't.
Yeah.
Even though there was one weekend I did slip up, I drank a lot of water and did pass the drug test. But
wow.
Yeah.
How much water did you drink?
A lot.
I'm surprised you didn't drown your
because I
kidneys.
knew that I had the drug test on Monday as well. And for some reason, I came back from weekend leave, and the friend that unfortunately is no longer with us, we hadn't seen each other, and we just...
Of course.
And again, it was then another, you can't control once you've done that.
Yes.
You can't not do that. But anyway, passed the drug test. I found I was good at it. I was fit, I was enthusiastic, but I was Grenadier Guards. I was going to be Grenadier Guards, and I wanted more out of that type of life. I wanted to learn something. So I asked if I could leave, and they did. They let me in, and I applied to go into the RAF because I wanted to do something, either pilot or wanted to get something out of that kind of career. Whilst that application was going through, I fell into medical recruitment. The rest is history. I got used to the money. I got used to the life. Yeah, I was going to say it's well paid, isn't it?
I
could afford my habit. I could.
Yeah.
And it was encouraged to, it's like the Wolf of Wall Street type vibes. Yeah. And I just fell in love with that life. And yeah.
And like you say, it's party hard in the recruitment. So it's all feeding each other, isn't it? All of these experiences now, gaining confidence, being validated, go to the army, that's encouraged, the alcohol's encouraged. Yep. Go into medical recruitment, that's a party hard situation, encouraged within that friendship group. And then at 25, this huge responsibility of a baby.
Yeah.
And would it be fair to say that because maybe you hadn't looked at your own pain, that there were some wounds that were opened with becoming a father?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Were you conscious of that at the time?
No, not at the time.
No.
It wasn't until I started psychotherapy in rehab that I became aware of those connections.
Yeah.
At the time, I was so in love with my son and so in love with my family. But I guess couldn't give up the life.
What was it that was hardest to give up?
The drugs.
And why do you think that was so hard? Apart from the medically, clinically, side of addiction, was being a good dad that loved his son enough when you'd been so used to the confidence, the validation, the escapism?
You know what? I don't know. I haven't really visited this like this before, so it might take me a little while to look at again. It's painful for me as well, even though it is painful, because there's a lot of regret around it.
Yes.
A lot of regret. I think I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I was terrified of becoming my dad.
There you go. That's what I was
I was
thinking.
terrified of becoming him, and without... Also at 25, there was a part of me that was that person who, I was still 25 at the end of the day. I was still young. I was having fun. I had good money. I had a great job. I was respected at work. I enjoyed what the drink and drug culture was doing for me as a person and my personality and the things that it was masking and hiding. And I guess that also from adolescence into early 20s, I was always mirroring, but this person, I could be me.
Yeah.
Or a version of me.
The one you liked.
The one I liked. I felt, again, respected and powerful because I was young and earning money. It was all of that nonsense. And in my head, and also from what other people had told me, because I was very impressionable. If someone said, you have to be that type of dad, I'm like, okay. I didn't know how to think,
of course,
feel for myself.
Yeah,
I'd had a whole life of being kind of directed by other people.
Well, fitting them. You had to fit them.
Yeah. And so when someone in our, I won't say whose, but someone in the family were like, well, you need to be that. I was like, okay, well, I can't be him then.
Yeah.
And then I would get resentful that I would see people doing both and being both at that age, who were young dads who would still go out for a few beers with the boys, but
they could still do the family
wake up and still do the family thing where I couldn't do both. So, my My partner was also suffering from postnatal depression, which was horrible for her, but also for me, because anything I did try and do, or anything that I felt was good and again warranted that validation from her, she maybe was seeing differently. And it was
You were 25.
25, yeah.
And you were 25, may I add, without the stability of what would be called a secure family unit.
Well, the day my son was born, my dad came to see him, and then when he found out that I was going to have a relationship with my mum, I never heard from him.
Right.
He just completely disowned me and my son and my new family.
Yeah. That's pain.
And I was without him.
That's big. That's a grief. That's a loss.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not enough.
Exactly.
We're not enough. Not only am I not enough, but my son and my partner's not enough for him. She's got postnatal depression. You're not equipped. When you've got your own abandonment and attachment issues, when you're mirroring people to make them love you, you're not equipped to know how to deal with postnatal depression. The services certainly have still got a long way to go in terms of postnatal care.
Yep.
So she would have felt very alone. You would have felt like, I'm trying to do the right thing here, but let's face it, at 25, and no disrespect for 25-year-olds, because some of them are amazing parents, but
for sure.
If you've got a history of trauma and you're an addict, I mean,
that's fucked.
Yeah. To put it bluntly. Yeah, we can swear as much as you want.
I haven't sworn yet. That's actually a record for me. It was a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it was. Which made you escape more.
I had no hope, really. And it's only kind of now from doing the work and, understanding, I have a lot more empathy for Kaylee, my partner, and my ex-wife now. And we'll obviously go maybe into that a little bit more, because she had it tough.
Yeah.
With postnatal depression and me.
Yeah. I mean, were you gone for periods of time at that point?
Earlier on, no. It was more, at 25, 26, it was more still escaping to parties.
Yes,
going
but not
out
for
with
days.
The boys and, going to a rave here but it was probably 25 and a half, 26, that's when the isolation set in.
Right.
Because then I would be doing both. I'd be going to the parties or down the pub with the boys and staying out late and coming home the next morning. But then I'd also be doing that on my own somewhere. But it was never for days on end. It led, I think the longest I ever went for was about 4 weeks, about a month.
Did she know where you were, or
she knew where I was, but
you weren't present for her at all?
I was completely high on cocaine and drugs and whiskey.
And you weren't checking in, or?
I couldn't. No, this is actually quite hard for me to revisit that, because I deal with this guilt every day around how I treated my family. Yeah. But again, I want to be open with it, because I know that there are other men out there who are going through this or have gone through this.
And hate themselves.
I hated myself. But that's the thing. Everyone used to tell me how much they hated me, how much they despised me, how much of a scumbag I was. None of it affected me, because I already thought about that.
No one could hate you more.
No one could hate me more than I hated myself for the things that I was doing. And my biggest resentment was the fact that I didn't want to do it, and I worked so hard in between these relapses to get better.
Yeah.
And the harder I worked, the harder I fell, and I couldn't understand it. And so I got to the point where I became quite nihilistic, and I just went, fuck this, I'd give up. And then that's what led to my suicide attempt. I'm just better off not here. Because if I come from a background that if you work hard, you become successful. And in recruitment, if you work hard, you hit your target, you earn commission. But I was working very hard at my recovery, and the results weren't coming in. And I didn't understand. So
you're a failure.
I'm a failure, yeah. And people are going to leave me, and they did. They absolutely did.
And obviously that little boy growing up that could never please everyone was now learning that, I was right. I'm not worth anything. I can't please anyone. I'm not good. In fact, I'm bad. Yeah. And so it's better for everybody. Because if you don't have the foundation of love and support, which is the most needed thing for any child, like essentially food, water, a roof. But if you don't have love everything becomes dysfunctional, maladaptive, because I wouldn't say it's not the foundation, because that is multifaceted. But if you've got everything else and you haven't got love, all sorts of things go wrong in the human psyche. You look at things, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute you're a psychopath, but we talk about...
Some would probably say.
Yeah, at times.
Yeah.
But faulty wiring, neural pathways, neuroplasticity, environmental factors, as well as genetic predispositions, as well as, medical things, also, it creates the person. But the personality is what's experienced over and over again. So the repetition of experiences and environments, that becomes your temperament, which becomes your personality. It can be rewired with neuroplasticity and certain therapeutic tools and behaviours, but you didn't know this at the time.
No.
So all you've got is, I'm not enough, essentially. I'm having to mirror everybody to fit in with them, but I'm still not winning here. And although I'm good at recruitment, that's the only thing I'm good at.
Became my identity.
Became your identity.
Success became my identity.
And then when you're failing at recovery, then I can't even succeed properly. So I don't have a place on this planet.
Pretty much.
And you said you still struggle with that now because of the guilt.
Oh yeah, I struggle massively with the guilt because we didn't even scratch the surface of the things that me and my family at the time went through. Because the thing that we would always argue with, or not argue with, how do I phrase this? The thing that we would always battle with is my side of the story and her side of the story. Because and that's another thing that I want to do with the guys at the Man Cave, is that I want to get them to see that it is about you, but it's also about them.
Yeah.
And I do use my story a lot, because now and I always go back to having done the work, it saved my life.
Yes.
Therapy saved my life.
Yeah.
And being able to understand how to understand my part and her part, like they both exist.
Yes.
They both exist.
Two truths exist in the same place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's a big thing at the Man Cave about getting people to be accountable for how we made them feel. Yeah. And my family did go through hell and back, but that's, at the time, it was very difficult, because I was only looking at it from the addict's perspective. Yes. And she was only really looking at it, or trying to understand it from the addict's perspective, but because of her pain and what I was doing to put her, and what I was putting her through, it was only coming, but everyone kind of understood it more from hers. And so I felt, again, I felt very alone. No one understood me. And then I had to escape that pain of loneliness. Addiction is a constant cycle of just pain and escaping pain, whatever that pain looks like.
What's interesting about this, and you'll maybe know a bit more than me, right? I want to bring this up because the amount of people...
I feel like we're about to get deep, so we would...
Yeah, sorry, I was just fiddling with stuff as well. You could see as I was looking at the microphone, this was going to be big.
Yeah.
I needed to position the microphone.
Let's go.
So I have a lot of people that have grown up in a household where their addiction featured. Your dad obviously had a drink problem. You've had a substance abuse and drink problem. And there's more to it than just the pain. Because people would go, maybe listening to this, would go, yeah, but I've been through loads of trauma. I didn't do drugs. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And I always say this, and I'm not a mad scientist, but I've been in this field for long enough to know a bit about addiction. What you've got to understand is genetic predisposition as well. And the fact that the environment, the genetic predisposition, even generational trauma, the field of epigenetics shows that if someone has gone through a trauma in your family, let's say a grandparent, you're more likely to have a heightened sense of anxiety and stress response as a grandchild. It often skips a generation actually, but not always. So your genetic expression as in your ancestry changes with the different traumas and experiences that your grandparents, great-grandparents, so on and so forth have experienced. So if we take that into account and we understand how that genetic expression actually means that our neurotransmitters communicate within our brain, we've got the neuroplasticity aspect, so our brain's neural wiring based on our experiences, the genetic predisposition, so how does our brain actually function? What can we see through my family that's common? We've got things such as those medical incidents. So like say you've got asthma and you've had, I know that you probably haven't, I don't know, but say you've got asthma and you've had loads of asthma attacks as a child, you might be slightly more hypervigilant because you're likely to understand that, you know, I could struggle to breathe at any given time if I haven't got my inhaler or, you know. So now I'm more hypervigilant in certain situations, which affects the way your prefrontal cortex can use its executive function elements and emotional. So you look at all of the pieces of the puzzle, but with addiction in particular, depending on the substance of choice, we will see that, say, GABA, a neurotransmitter, 35% of which is produced in the gut. So again, having a healthy gut really helps. If you haven't got stabilizing neurotransmitters, and let's say, I think people that drink alcohol and maybe cocaine, often can be surmised that they may be lower in GABA, which is seen as, like, if I'm right, the anxiety stabilizing neurotransmitter. They are going to get more out of drinking and taking cocaine than somebody who retains GABA really, really well. Okay. Are you with me so far?
I'm trying to keep track. Yeah.
Sorry. I'm just thinking if you're not with me, then the listeners are probably not with me either. But essentially, if you haven't got the right balance of neurotransmitters and you've got these genetic predispositions also and different life experiences, basically you might feel different drinking to I feel.
Right, okay, yeah.
So if I have a drink, I don't really, I mean, yes, I can get a bit silly and a bit tipsy, but then I get tired. And so I don't ever really crave, I used to drink a lot when I was younger to deal with my own trauma, but I don't really crave alcohol now because it makes me feel tired and I don't get a buzz out of it. Whereas somebody else whose neurotransmitters might behave differently to mine would get a buzz and they feel confident and grounded and leveled. And I think it's to do with GABA in alcohol and cocaine.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
I mean, someone, if I'm wrong on that, it's an area of study I've done, but some time ago, it might be that someone listens and says, actually, so email in to me if that's the case. But I believe it's to do with that. So when we look at the disease of addiction, the reason that I think it's classed as by lots of people a disease is because you could see the way that the brain structure neurotransmitters. And
sorry, I'm laughing because I still see, I class it as a disease, but I know that there will be a lot of people.
They see it as a choice.
Oh, exactly. And one thing addiction is not is a choice.
Well, no one does that to themselves because people lose everything over addiction.
I sat in hotel rooms in the dark for 3 to 4 days with no sleep, trying to overdose to kill myself.
Yeah, because it was
you don't
that bad.
do that because you want to.
No. And that's why I wanted to highlight the different aspects of a person's brain there and the different possibilities of what someone's been through. But also, interestingly, the neurotransmitter. You know, we talk about ADHD and we say people with ADHD, the dopamine isn't retained in the brain for as long as someone without ADHD. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, the GABA. There's a similar theory with the GABA. And then obviously dopamine is highly involved in cocaine. Yeah. So if there's any predispositions, genetic predispositions to ADHD, there's so many, and you'll find a lot of addicts do have ADHD.
So basically it was a recipe for disaster, everything that... yeah.
You were...
And it ended up as a disaster.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how many times did you attempt to take your own life?
One
big one.
One cry for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about saying that? Because I've spoken openly about my suicide attempts actually being a cry for help rather than me I wanted pain to stop. I didn't necessarily want to die.
Yeah.
I wanted to maybe fall asleep and never wake up again, but I didn't necessarily want to die. How was the cry for help for you?
So the cry for help was just that. I didn't want to die. I wanted people to know that I needed help.
Yeah.
And that I didn't want to be doing this anymore, and I needed I needed some support.
That's the
but
key.
the right support, because the support I was getting, and again, I don't blame anyone. I completely understand why people behaved the way they did, why they acted the way they did. You know, there was not as much kind of education around the subject as there is now. And again, another reason why the Man Cave and Lads will exist or does exist. So when I say things like this, it's never a dig or a shot at them. But the support that they felt they were giving me wasn't correct. You know.
Was it more judgmental? Not that they were meaning to be judgmental, but do you think it came from judgment? The support that they were trying to give.
I think the people who come from the older generation, you know, it came across. They wanted to see me well.
Yeah.
But their support was, well, it wasn't even support. It was more judgment.
Yeah.
Then there was certain types of support that came, and it was always confusing, because I'm like, well, you're not an addict. Why are you telling me how to get clean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it doesn't work.
You don't
like
take
that.
financial advice from someone who's broke.
No.
So why am I going to take advice on sobriety from someone who goes out on the weekend and gets pissed and sniffs lime still?
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to me. But again, that person who had zero knowledge about how he's wired and how I had to try and take their advice, and then that wouldn't. And then it, you know, a lot of people, the old famous, will just stop.
Oh yeah.
Great, okay, thank you for that one. But you know, if I could do that, I would have.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't purposely be hurting myself to the level that I am, and I definitely wouldn't be hurting my family the way I am if I could just stop. And I also wouldn't be an addict, because the whole point of being, you know, the definition of addiction is you can't control. Once that's in you, it's very difficult to stop.
And also, for those that judge addicts, they may not realise that they themselves are addicted to different things. It may not just be as socially unacceptable. Like if you're a workaholic, you know, if you go to
I wanted
the gym,
to get onto this point.
Yeah.
I really wanted to get onto this point, because I used to get a lot of comments from people who now I look at and are still behaving in the same way. Because have you ever read Russell Brand's Recovery?
I have. Yeah,
It
brilliant.
says in there, like, every one of us is addicted to something.
Yeah.
It's just addiction is only noticed when the consequences outweigh the actions.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And it's about society's rules.
Exactly. Also, yeah, absolutely.
Because
Society's rules.
you could work 80 hours a week, and if you're making lots of money and you've got a good business, people are like, well done.
Yeah.
Well done. But actually, is that balanced? Is that normal? I mean, I would say I'm a workaholic, and no, it's definitely not balanced, and no, it's definitely not normal. I would rather be a workaholic than I would be an alcoholic. But that doesn't mean there's not a similar physiological process happening in my body and in my brain.
It's a distraction,
It's a
isn't it?
distraction. It's an escapism.
Because we were talking before, I'm doing the same right now.
Yeah.
Okay, taking on all these projects.
Yes.
And am I distracting myself from some level of emotional pain? Yes, I know exactly what it is that I'm distracting myself from.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think that for everyone, you know, whether exercise
is a big one.
Shopping, online, social media.
Social media, the scrolling.
Huge.
That's going to create a lot of problems for kids. A lot of problems, because their brain is not used to not looking for that very quick hit.
But my addiction, my consequences far outweighed any of those that we just discussed.
Yeah.
You know, and that was abandoning my family. And that was when I would get to a particular point of doing too much, I couldn't function.
Yeah.
And just, you know, I was so paranoid or in psychosis. I didn't know what was reality and what wasn't. And so checking in with people who, and let's face it, they didn't even enter my mind.
No.
But I purposely took so much cocaine and drunk so much alcohol that nothing existed. Because if I have a slight edge in reality, the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment would hit, and I'd get myself straight out of it. So again, it was that constant cycle.
Yeah.
Trying to sober up and come down and get clean was horrific. And it was actually on the first ever real bad come down that's when I properly attempted to take my life. The other cry for help one was just that. I overdosed on sertraline. I just took all my sertraline.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That you must have been ill after that.
I was in hospital for 2 days on a drip and whatnot, but
because that's the bit that people don't know.
I didn't want to die then.
No, but we call it a cry for help, and I really don't like that phrase because it doesn't.
One, isn't it?
People that do that, including me, including you, I think we both said a cry for help, but you can't. You've tried to express, however you know, that you need help.
Yeah.
The support isn't there for one reason or another, and there are no words left to say I'm in pain. Please, can you support me? Please, can someone get this to stop? There are no words when you're in that place to say. You can't find vocabulary that expresses enough how much pain you're in. So that's where that action is fingers crossed someone gets it. But then the days of feeling, I mean, the sickness and the unwellness after. People don't realise, and you can really, mind you, the amount of substances you were taking, your liver would have been quite heavily overused at the time anyway, but you can really fuck your liver up taking an overdose and long-term damage. So there's consequences for... So again, if we look at when people do this, because some people call it attention seeking or whatever.
I got a lot of that.
Of course.
That really hurt.
Yeah, because it's not that.
When people said that.
It's a form of attention seeking, but the way that phrase is used, the attention that you need is support, love, and being looked after. The
attention is I need help.
Yeah.
Not, oh, look at me, feel sorry for me, or anything like that. And, you know, it has been weaponised, my attempts. So then there's certain things that I won't talk to people about because I don't want it weaponised against
I don't blame
me.
you.
But that one where I tried to hang myself.
To try to hang yourself. So trigger warning, everybody. This might be where you fast forward if you don't want to hear about this, because this is dark, but I think people should listen. Because it's really, really important. Really important. So you are now, okay, that cry for support or the reach out for someone to help, it doesn't work. And so you're back again in the position where you think the best I could do here is take myself off this planet.
Well, after the overdose and the cry, nothing changed. No one, you know, I think that there was that, I'd wake up to having people in hospital. Are you okay? No one was there. I just woke up to myself.
Oh my God.
That hurt. Because I think subconsciously I was like, well, if I do this and I end up in hospital, they'll all be there saying, oh, we love you. And just no one was there. No one. And I was like, okay, that's not what I expected. And that pain.
Yeah.
And I by that point, and again, it's not a reflection on my children's mum or whatever. It's just a case of, you know, she had a responsibility to my children at that time. And they were probably in school. I don't even know what day of the week it was. So, but back then, that's all I focused on was that pain. And it was that loneliness and that abandonment. And again, it triggered that abandonment type thing. And I just went hell for leather. I just needed to escape. I could not bring myself... The thought of getting sober again and then failing again was a horrific thought process, because I'd done it so often. I'd get clean, I'd get sober, I'd reach 30, 60, 90, maybe 100 days, which for an addict is incredible.
Yeah. And
that's really good going. To get 1 day clean is a miracle. But when you go that far and then fall twice as hard as you fell the time before, dragging yourself back off that floor again, and knowing that if you do, the chances are you're going to fuck up and fail again.
Because that's the reflection that you're now seeing of yourself. Is just I'm likely to fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was the narrative. It was the pattern of behaviour that was playing out.
Yeah.
Not just for a short period of time. We're talking years.
Yeah.
Relapse after relapse after. I have relapsed, if not thousands of times.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think at that point, you know, yes, it was this cry for help. Yes, I did want people's attention. Yes, I did want people to kind of, I don't know, love me. I knew they loved me, but show me that they loved me in a different way that I'd never seen love before or felt love before, and intervene, take the reins, take control.
I was going to say, what you needed was what you'd never had.
Yeah.
Which was the family system that stayed together. I'm not saying that people split up, but I think the way it happened, you know.
All of this, we were still together.
I mean, your family.
Oh,
what
sorry.
you needed.
Yeah.
So at that point, we know, because you've referred to the mother, we know that relationship ended, which I think you've learnt a lot from being the child and having the relationship, you know, the way your mum left and all of that. Like we said, we don't want to vilify anyone here, but facts are facts. No. Yeah. You never had the safety and the security and the foundations that you needed to develop in a way that your brain needed. As you're relapsing and failing, and that cry for help, what you're actually craving is what you'd never had as a child, which is security and safety.
Yeah.
So, and because you see the mirror image that you get of yourself now is complete failure. I failed so many times. There isn't that support network. I may as well not be here.
And I just, you know, put myself in a hotel. And just cracked on. I didn't plan to do it. That's the thing. I didn't plan. I after that attempt and then going into the hotel, it was just, I'm just going to continue to keep myself numb.
Yes.
It was the come down.
Yes, you did say that. Yeah.
Yeah. That was torture.
So tell me about that if you can.
Yeah. So it's, you know, when you use, and I wasn't drinking, you know, cider. I was drinking hard whiskey straight, vodka straight. You know, I was drinking the tough stuff and also sniffing coke and staying awake and having that in my system 48, 72 hours.
Wow.
Like, I wouldn't sleep, I wouldn't eat. It was just constant. Every 15, 20 minutes, another drink, another line, another drink, another line. And that took me to, you know, horrible paranoia, psychosis, where I would see things, see people coming out of the wall trying to stab me. I'd see ghosts, I'd see demons. It was a real torturous time. And after doing it for kind of 4 or 5 days straight and going through that, there becomes this point, or for me anyway, where everything kind of slows down and the paranoia is still there, but it's not as demonic, basically. And again, I knew that there was no way out of this other than getting better and trying again. Because again, I didn't want to, the call for help wasn't, I didn't want to die. I kind of had this nihilistic point of view, but I also did think that I was quite cowardly in the sense that I would have never have, I didn't think I did, or would have. I didn't have the minerals, basically. I didn't have the bollocks to do anything, you know, slip my wrist or anything like that. But yeah, so I was like, right, okay, another attempt to come down. But I'd never pushed myself to those limits. I'd never pushed myself to being awake for 5 days. I'd never pushed myself to doing that much and drinking that much, because I'd always plan it. It was never just a constant pickup.
Yeah.
I'd go out and I'd buy all the cigarettes, all the whiskey.
So you knew what you were gonna.
I knew I was gonna go for, and then there would be times where, you know, I'd go to a shop if I could brave being seen in public, or I'd be hat up. COVID was great because I had the mask. I could cut.
Yeah.
You know, it was one of them situations. And however, I ended up with a lot and decided to stop, but I'd never experienced just stopping after 5 days of being completely fueled by that.
I can imagine that's actually very dangerous.
Yeah. And it was, you know, I told my dealer, don't give me any more.
Yeah.
And I drank my last bit of whiskey, and it was like, right, and it hit me like a steam train.
What happened? Like, how does that feel?
I felt like my skin was on fire. Yeah. But it was like this burning sensation, but I felt completely wet. I guess I was maybe through sweating. But I just wanted to tear my skin off. I felt uncomfortable. I was shaking. It was just kind of like what you would experience, and I can't compare the two because I've never withdrawn from heroin.
Yes, I was going to say train spotting came
kind
to
of
mind.
like that. It was complete torture.
Yeah.
And it was 2-3 in the morning. I tried every person I possibly knew to get more, and I couldn't. There was no shops open, and it was a split decision of, take your belt off, put it, basically hang it. So I was in a hotel, for anyone who's local to me who might know, is at the Campanile opposite the Pink Punters in Bletchley. And there was like in hotels where you get like a desk, but you get a chair.
Yeah.
So my belt wouldn't go all the way. There was no loop for it. So I tightened it as much as it could around the wardrobe, round my neck, and then used the chair to twist to tighten it.
Got you.
You know what I mean? Because I didn't have anything that would actually...
Yeah.
And I got it into a position where, it did. And I basically blacked out with the rail on top of me, the chair, and...
So did you then wake up like...
Yeah, I woke up. So obviously it's loosened from where it had... So it loosened, which thankfully didn't...
But then what are your thoughts when you then open your eyes? You're
it was the worst. Even now I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was like this. My brain was like jumping around in my head. It was everything. My vision. It was. I didn't know where I was. It was horrible.
It's completely disoriented.
Knowing
that it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're still in a world of hell.
Yeah, but it was. It's really difficult to explain physically, like what I was going through, but I knew the only thing that would fix it was more. So I went and done everything I possibly could to get more, and I got it.
So
and
this
it calmed
didn't work.
me down, and I went again.
We're in the moment there of this is the only way out. It fails, so now we've got to go back to taking more to not have to feel like this.
Yeah.
So how long does this go on for? I mean, in terms of days.
Well, like I said to you earlier, I abandoned my family once for a whole month.
Yeah.
And just did it for a month. Not at that point, you can't, your body wouldn't. The longest I've ever put my body through it is about, and I don't like saying this because I always think people are going to think I'm bullshitting.
Well, then they haven't lived it.
But there was one time that I was awake for 9 days.
Is this the time you were arrested? Or outside the shops?
No, I've been arrested quite a few times.
So there's many times.
Yeah.
The last time though, you said you'd been...
No, I wasn't arrested. I was chucked out of a hotel.
Oh, you were chucked out, right.
Yeah, I was chucked out of a hotel. That was one of the times, yeah. I had done that.
Yeah.
Several.
But you were arrested many times.
Arrested, I say many. I got arrested for drink driving. Mm-hmm. I got arrested and sectioned.
Yeah.
I've been arrested for other things, drug related, earlier days to early 20s.
Yeah.
But when it got more apparent that I was really suffering with my addiction, the police done a lot to help.
Did they?
Yeah, they were really good.
That's good to know.
Yeah, they were really kind to me. I was always too cautious about getting caught with it, so I'd plant it and hide it. And if I was ever in a car park, I would know the tree and get a rock, and they've never caught me with it. I was I don't want to say too smart, but I didn't ever want to. And the only reason why is because I didn't want to be put in a cell and not have the ability to do it. That's the only reason why.
Yeah.
If I got caught and all of my drink and drugs got taken off me and I had to come down in a cell.
Yeah.
The thought of that was the worst feeling ever. Because like I say, from that experience, I then learned what my limits were, my body limits were, how to come down properly.
Yeah.
So then every time I would relapse, I would then have a system to come down without experiencing what I did because I knew what I tried to do.
I mean...
Yeah, honestly, it was fucked up. Like, it's stupid. I sound like a bit of a dickhead.
No, you don't. No.
Like, even now, I look back and go, what was I even thinking? I had a system.
Yeah, but it's
ridiculous.
But that just shows you what addiction looks like.
Yeah.
It's not just as simple as, right, I'm going to do 18 lines of cocaine and a couple of crates of beer. There's so much to... I mean, we will never in a podcast in a million years get the deep, intricate details because there's so much to it. Yeah. But what you've just said is really powerful because now you're very entrepreneurial and you have systems for everything.
Yeah.
Your brain works in systems.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying earlier about these genetic predispositions and the way that our brain functions. Addiction isn't just about, well, just give it up. Your brain works in a particular way, which you're now putting into your work.
Yeah, well, I weigh up the risk.
Yes.
And, I weighed up the risk every time that I would come down. And, because, again, I didn't want to... Again, I wanted to die. I was suicidal. But my way of trying to kill myself was overdosing on cocaine.
Yeah.
It was never to do something like what I did that time in the hotel
That
room.
was just like it was unbearable.
That was a train had hit me.
Yeah.
I could not take this. I could not take the physicality. I needed a way out. It was a split-second decision.
Yeah.
I want to die. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
Ever since then, I also had this fucked up view that if I overdosed, people would feel sorry for me, and if I killed myself, they'd call me selfish. I had that view. So after the kind of attempt, I would always say, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die from overdose. So I'd go and get so much and just absolutely hammer it until... But it just never killed me because I always thought, well, if I died like this, they'd feel sorry for me. Poor addict. But if I killed myself, they'd call me selfish and a coward, and that I took the easy way out.
Which just goes to show how desperate you were for love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
But it's desperate.
Yeah.
It's desperate to be loved. And that's why I kept bringing it back to your early childhood family. That I'm not vilifying anyone because we both know as parents and having gone through our traumas and maladaptive behaviours, how parents end up being fucked up themselves.
Yeah.
Like, we get it. I'm not making right of it. I'm just saying we understand it.
Yeah.
And you said yourself you've got empathy with your dad now and you've got a good relationship with your mum. But what I'm saying is in child development terms, not having that love, I said it before, I'll say it again, leaves you, the biggest thing that you were chasing, although it felt like it was addiction, was validation and love. They were the things that you didn't feel you had. And that's why it's really important to put context to it and give the context of the neurotransmitters, give the context of the structure of the brain, the way your brain works in systems anyway, give the context of the history behind this. It's not straightforward, it's not linear. And the guilt that you feel is understandable because society says, yeah, but you're a failure. Like, even with your parents, would you be sitting here having this conversation with me if they hadn't been the way they'd been? But then we have to look at their generational trauma, their parents before them and before. This is about generational trauma.
It's funny, I was actually talking to a parent of the football today about so remember I talked about the 3 friends?
Yes.
He's also in recovery.
Right.
We were talking about our parents and their trauma and how it affected us.
Well, and don't forget, and I've said this on many different podcasts, and including my own, so I'm 45, give context, time context. My grandparents would have been in the war. Yeah. So they're World War One. So we've got World War One, World War Two. So they would have been brought up with, again, it would have been spoken about at the time, but PTSD, violence, aggression, unresolved issues. They're then in the war themselves. They are going to have some level of PTSD, not only from their childhood. We could go back even further than that to like wars before and Spanish flu and God knows what else. We could go back and go back and go back. But there's PTSD, there's maladaptive behaviours, there's hurt children, hurt people. So the way they bring up their children, they're fucked up. Their children are our parents. So this is not just a one-way ticket to like, you're the problem. This has been generations worth of trauma.
And also in my situation, but that was how I took it then, and that's what I was told.
Yes.
So in the kind of like, how old am I? God, my addiction was so long. In the middle of it, let's say it was, you're the problem, fix the addiction, fix everything. Yeah. Now only looking back, do I know that everyone involved had their own stuff going on. Yeah. And I think the other thing about, we go back to my kind of wounds, I just wanted to be loved. I was loved. I was super loved by people. My ex-wife absolutely loved and adored me, wanted me to get better, wanted me to be well. I knew my children loved and adored me. Her parents, because my parents weren't really on the scene. My mum was, but she wasn't as close as what her parents were. But the way they showed that love wasn't how I needed to be loved. And how can I expect people to love me when I don't love myself? Or how to know how to love myself?
Correct, but don't forget, it's not that part of you when we say you were just looking to be loved. The part of you we're talking about is the child. The adult version of you is never going to receive the love that you needed as a child. So as you're showing up with your in-laws at that point, they're loving you as the adult. They're giving you the love that they know how to give in the circumstances that were going on to you as the adult. What we're chasing is what we can never have. We're chasing the childhood that we didn't have. We're chasing the foundation that we've never had. That's what we're chasing. So it doesn't matter if you're loved in the present. I mean, even I would say that people would always say I was the problem. And I would say, well, I kind of know I'm the problem because I am aggressive. And you're right, I am this. But these are the reasons why. And there's nothing I can do about that because I've been abused now. I've been neglected now. I can't change that. But I don't have the capacity to think that way at the time. But the inner child in me is desperate to have that. And then you have to accept that you're never going to be able to have that. And that's where you have to learn to love yourself. And that is no mean feat.
No, I'm still working on it. Even now, I'd say I quite like myself.
Yeah.
Don't think I'm fully there at, loving myself, because even now, I'm 2.5 years, I think 910 days completely clean and sober, which is something I never thought was possible. I was at football this morning with my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law.
Yeah.
I went and dropped off the kids and spoke to my ex-wife, and they're having a great night tonight, watching a film and a takeaway, and we got a great relationship now, and we support each other in so many different ways, and everything seems to have fallen into place. It's just such a shame that you had to go through all of that bullshit to get there.
Yeah.
And to kind of feel like you're somewhat ready to take on the next chapter. And that's the one thing I really do. I don't know, how do I say it? Do I resent it? Because I definitely do resent sobriety.
Yeah.
I resent recovery.
Yeah.
But that's a me problem, because I set expectations on clean time.
Yeah.
When I get to 6 months, I'm going to feel like this. When I get to 1 year, I'm going to feel like that.
Yeah.
And when I got to 1 year, I was depressed.
Yeah.
My mental health in my first 2 years of recovery was the worst.
I bet.
Which then obviously led me on to starting the man cave and whatnot. And that's kind of what fueled that journey through. And we haven't even
touch
the surface of some of the crazy situations I put myself in, the drug-induced psychosis and what I did during that, and again the stuff with the police and what I did to those around me, and
when you say that, because obviously there's stories upon stories upon stories, what's the theme in those stories from the point of view of, if people are, when you've told those stories, would you say that in those stories you are someone who's selfish, violent, what adjectives would you apply to those stories?
Depends on the situation. 100% selfish. I don't think you can be a drug addict using and not be. Narcissistic. Any addict I know, and I've met a lot of them, and obviously knowing that I am one, when you are using or have got it in your head that you want to use, you do become a selfish narcissist.
Yeah.
Completely.
Which is very different. I want to caveat that, very different to narcissistic personality disorder, just because the word narcissist is bandied around all the time now.
Yeah.
You become very narcissistic.
Yeah, very narcissistic. Absolutely. Very selfish, very self-centered. It's all about me. You're the one to blame.
Yeah.
No accountability. Look what you've done. Because it's all fueling the using.
Yes.
Giving yourself permission. Giving yourself permission to do it. I was very angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say violent, very angry. And anger was a massive fuel.
Yeah.
to using. But again, since doing psychotherapy, I know that that's only anger's a secondary. It's only hiding the primary.
Which is pain.
Which is pain, which is fear and loneliness and abandonment, whatever my wounds were. But my coping mechanism was anger. To not have to feel that. But again, it just fueled, fueled my addiction. I was not a nice person to be around. I wasn't a nice person to be around when I knew I was going to do it subconsciously, not consciously. Because I would still be doing all the things I was told and suggested, but it weren't working. I was getting really frustrated and really angry. I was running my business at that point. I was trying to succeed and trying to show people that I was more than this scumbag drug addict. And inside I was dead. I could not look at my children and not feel guilty. I could not look at my wife and not feel guilty. And again, it was all of this that I was working so hard not to feel that fueled me to do it and repeat the same pattern. And it caused more pain to them and more pain to myself.
Tell me about the guilt.
It's horrible. Even today, I do struggle. Struggle with the guilt. I struggle with how the biggest thing I struggle with is my children. That's the biggest thing I struggle with, is knowing that the things that they're now going through are the majority of what I did and the trauma I've inflicted on them. That is the hardest thing to deal with. My son my children are the most amazing people. They are beautiful, they are kind, they are caring, they are sweet, they are funny, and they are the most loving two children on this earth, and I have a huge debt to always pay to their mum for always I'm getting emotional now, always turning up for them when I weren't there. And I'll always be forever grateful. And I know that the parts of them that they struggle with, masks, not being vulnerable, all that comes from me and what I did. I still, to this day, I struggle with it. I do struggle with it. And then, it's even to this day because of like we were talking before, this weight that I'm carrying, because it's my role and responsibility to provide and pay, and even though we're divorced, I still have to provide a house, and I've got extra financial pressure on my shoulders, and I'm taking on these projects with the cave, and I'm holding not just my own emotional weight but other people's, and then I'm reacting badly to their behavior. I'm pretending like I'm going, not again, I'm just in a different way, I'm causing more. So it's hard. It really is hard.
I think it's really important to say this, because what you're doing is you're talking about the things that other parents feel, but perhaps don't feel that they should say to anybody else. Right? And I remember when I had my daughter, and there were times when she's a highly sensitive child. She needed me and I needed her. And there was a lot of people judging the way I was parenting at the time, because she didn't want to be put down. There's so many different reasons why I won't go into now, but I can remember everyone telling me I was doing it wrong and whatever. And then essentially, because she was quite sensitive and she had lots of different digestive issues and so on, I remember a couple of nights where she would scream and scream and scream, and I'd had no sleep because she wouldn't sleep in the day. And there was a moment where I genuinely saw myself and thought I was going to throw her against the wall. She was probably 2 months old at the time. I genuinely saw myself do it. I thought I was going to do it. And I felt so guilty about it, because I felt so inept as a mother, especially the new, I've only had one baby and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was probably, not long before I fell pregnant with her, I'd done the cry for help suicide attempt. So I wasn't very well at the time, really. I had OCD at the time, so that brought on germ phobia for me. There was all sorts going on. And I remember feeling so guilty about it that I just thought, the only way that I can ever make this okay is to tell her the story. Not in detail, but when she's old enough to go, do you know what? Mummy did this thing once. It's not because she didn't love you. Even when she was about 2 or 3, not because she didn't love you. It's because she wasn't in a great space, and we can all experience that sometimes. And if you're not in a great space, you're allowed to feel that way.
Absolutely.
And I carried on doing that. So if ever, and even now, like, we had a challenging discussion yesterday. She's doing GCSEs about whether she's revising enough. By the way, she's brilliant, and I don't need to pressure her because she's so great. But I was just like, we had a conversation and she said something, and I took it as though it was like, well, if I don't do that well, it doesn't matter, does it? And I was like, no, it does matter, because you've got to. The only rule in my house is you've got to do your best. I don't care what that is. That's all you got to do. Just do your best. I'm not really bothered about the education system. I just want you to know you've done your best. And it was a little bit like, no, I'm going to have to pull you up on that. Now, the thing is, she would rightly say that she didn't mean it the way it sounded. And she's honest, so that's fine. But I was a little bit like, no, I've got to be in my bonnet now. I'm a bit pissed off. So at some point I shall say to her, that was me. That wasn't you. That was me. I got to be in my bonnet, and that was a reflection of me probably.
Yeah.
Don't you take that on board. Like, I know these aren't big things in the grand scheme of it, because I'm actually, I'd say, on the whole, a good parent.
Yeah.
But probably not as present as I could be, because I'm always working, which is a guilt that I carry.
Yeah.
But again, I'll have that conversation with her. This is not about your level of worthiness. This is not me working the way I do. It's not because you aren't enough. Like, she doesn't care. She's 16. She doesn't want me in her face all the time.
Yeah.
But the point is, I'll always think that way.
Yeah.
And the only way that I can ever come to terms with that is like, give her the space to say, you're doing, and she will do sometimes, you're not letting me finish. You're not listening to me. And then I have to, even if my nervous system is dysregulated, I have to then go, okay. And I have to then, I have to be respectful, and I have to be a bit reflective and go back and go, I'm really sorry that you felt that way. Because every parent, be it that they're an addict or not, will have hurt their children.
Yeah, of course.
And what I'm saying to you is, with those little snippets of stories, is if you're going to feel guilty, maybe reframe the guilt and say, I feel guilty because I care so much, because I love you so much. I've made mistakes. The fact that I feel this guilty is because I've made mistakes, but it's also because I care, and it's all because it's because I love you that I feel this guilty. It will never go. I will always feel guilty, but it shows that I'm loving, caring, reflective, and that's what you've got to take from it.
And I do. It's, again, the way that I work. It's just, some days I'm very proud of myself for the journey, you know, because I know any addict out there who has got clean, you know, and managed to stay clean. I know what it takes. Like, it takes a lot, you know, because it's not just giving up drinking drugs. That is probably the easiest part of it all, is actually getting clean, staying clean. And
staying with your emotions.
Seeing with your emotions, processing them, compartmentalizing them, going back, doing the work, you know, navigating life, and having to put boundaries in place, and having the confidence to say, look, you're bad for me, restarting with friendship groups, because, again, another reason why I started the Man Cave, I had no friends. I had one mate, you know. It was recovery's difficult, and I think that, sorry, I've lost my train of thought now, where I was going.
It was about the guilt.
Yeah, the guilt. And some days I will, you know, even then when you were talking, I was like, I still have these intrusive thoughts that they would have been better off without me in their life.
Wow.
You know, I still have them, but, you know, their mum also says, you know, you are, yeah, we all know, like, let's not beat around the bush. We do know that you are the reason for some of their trauma. And I get that. I take that on board, because if I don't, I'm never going to get better. And I'm never going to help them. I have to be accountable. But, you know, she always says that I am, you know, responsible for a lot of other good things. And I think that now I am accountable, because, I was telling you before, like, this week presented to me that I had to find more balance, and I don't have the emotional capacity for what is going on with my son. And I'm just so grateful that we are in that place where we're co-parenting, to say that you take on this part.
Yes.
Let me take on this part.
You know where your skill set is as a parent.
Know where your skill sets lie, and, you know, that's one thing she always has been and always will be, is an amazing mum.
Yeah.
You know, and allow that. I guess I also now have that time and space to do that work in order to be better for them. Yeah. Because although 900 and whatever days it is amazing, it's still early.
Yeah.
It's still early.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You know, I'm not a decade into recovery. I'm not 15
And even if you
years,
were,
I'm
we
only a
know people
couple.
can relapse even 15 years
I was in rehab with someone for 8. He was 8 years clean.
Yeah.
And the maddest part was he came back to the same rehab, and the therapists were actually, they got clean with him in that rehab. And they were now the therapists taking the sessions.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he'd relapsed after 8 years.
And that's why you got to manage your expectations.
You can never become complacent.
No.
You can never, ever. That's why you will never, ever, to the day I die, you will never hear me say recovered.
Yes,
ever.
recovering.
Always recovering. And I will never be healed. I'm always healing.
Do you know what? That's what I love about the recovering addiction community.
Yeah.
Is that what is it? Is it step 4 or 5 or both about responsibility for your actions?
God,
I know there's
so many years now.
Yeah, I think it's step 4 or 5 where it's about accountability and responsibility and owning all the things that you've done wrong.
Step four is the fears and and all the resentments.
Yeah,
you got to own your part in it.
Yeah.
And
So
then 5, I think, is you tell them to that person.
That's right. Right. 4 and 5. Yeah. And
we'll have someone from that community be like, nope, you're wrong.
I know, that's why I'm scared to quote it. I thought it was 4 and 5. I just couldn't be sure.
Between steps 2 and 8, somewhere in between.
Between 1 and 12.
Yeah, exactly.
But there is that bit which I love, and then the other part there, because we're all healed. Like I always say, I'm kind of the most healed I've ever been. However, I know that I still have suicidal ideations. I know that I still have a desire, because I used to cut really badly. I used to self-harm. I know I still want to self-harm. And I said on Liam Tuff's podcast, actually, I said, you know, when you smoke after a meal and then you're a non-smoker, but after a meal, sometimes you think, oh, I'd love a cigarette.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's how I feel about self-harm. If I'm dysregulated, I'm like, if I could just fucking cut my arm to pieces, this would feel better. Even now.
So it's exactly the same for me in addiction.
Yeah.
And I'd love a line right now.
Yeah.
Take that. Oh.
It just, that feeling, never, that's why I say I love that community, because they understand it's recovering, healing.
Well, you just said then, you used the word healed, but you left it open because you're still such more of your journey to go. This is the most healed I've ever been.
Yeah.
Well, there's still so much room to grow and continue. So I always get a little bit, I do get a little bit cautious. I don't gravitate to people who use the word recovered. Yeah. Especially not when they're doing a share after, they're saying it after 60 days sober.
Yeah.
60 days sober, I'm recovered. Okay, I can't be around you.
No.
But, I guess in recovery, you find your people. And when I say recovery, I don't mean drinking drugs. I mean in any walk of life, healing, mental health, depression, self-harm.
Yeah.
Once you find that community that you can be safe with.
Yeah.
And be honest with. Because there are people in my community that have gone, oh, I'm recovered. And I'm like, mate, you're not.
You're not.
You never will be.
No.
And I can be honest with you because it comes from a place of love. Yeah. And it's I'm speaking my truth, take it or leave it. Yeah. I'm never going to tell you what you're doing is right or wrong. But at the end of the day, what you're saying, my opinion, you're wrong for saying that. Yeah. Rephrase that and look at it. Yeah. And that's what the Man Cave is about. It is about keeping each other accountable, in check. Because we easy. Can.
Yeah, the ego.
Yeah, the ego can take over, or what I call venom.
Yeah.
It can take over, and it can, you can end up in a lonely place because of it.
Tell me a little bit, because we spoke about this off camera, and I really like it, the robot and venom.
Yeah, Mr. Robot.
Yeah, tell me about that, because we were having a conversation about fight, flight, freeze. Yeah. And you talked about your psychotherapist, Ricky, and the work that you've done.
Shout out, Ricky.
Shout out to Ricky. I remembered his name on purpose because I wanted to do that. So you did this work, and I said, "Oh, is this from IFS psychotherapy?" Because it's it was kind of a natural thing. Maybe Ricky's probably informed in that process, so it naturally came out, and I loved it. So tell me about Venom and the robot.
So Venom is the side of me that it's my shortcomings. It's the side of me that I don't like. It's my shadow, a part of my shadow. If you take away the wounds and you're left with the behaviors, it's that. It's the narcissism. It's the ego. It's the selfish, self-centered. Oh, what else? My ego's the biggest one.
And the anger, I guess.
And the anger, yeah. It's that side of me that when he normally comes out in triggers. So if you've triggered me and I'm angry, I'll probably like, fuck you, I'm better than you anyway. It's the ego. That's it's that type of thing that drives me to protect what I'm feeling.
Protect.
Yeah,
I'm glad you said
it's a protection mechanism. Yeah,
because we say in IFS, which again is basically parts work. Yeah. We say that it's a protector part. So all those really sort of the things you're not so proud of, actually your brain thinks is protecting you from something. You said you were triggered. Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
It's a question I'd ask somebody in a session. When you're triggered, there's an awareness that you've been triggered, but usually your life experiences will lead to a cellular response from an emotional point of view, and the cellular response will become the first port of call before the thought, which is why a lot of people don't like CBT, because they say, what were you thinking just before it happened? And they're like, I don't know, I just felt it and then I reacted. And it's because they're having a cellular response and they react to the cellular response. Yeah. So that brain response, the fight flight, is created, that cellular response. When you're triggered and venom shows up, do you know what your nervous system response is, that cellular feeling?
God, we're going deep now. Probably not. I don't know.
When you feel triggered, where do you feel it in your body?
This is going to sound weird, behind my ears.
So you almost feel like
it's like a tension.
Yeah, starts to build. So your body's getting prepared.
Yeah, it's behind here. It goes behind my ears and kind of down my jawline.
Yeah. So you're starting to be ready. Okay.
And then in here.
Into your chest.
Yeah, into my chest.
So that's venom. Yeah. Where venom starts to appear is where that nervous system response happens.
And the reason why I call him Venom, because if anyone who knows the character, definitely in the Spider-Man movie, in the second one, he attaches.
Yes.
And he tries to get him off.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like for me. When venom is on me, I try. It's a hard process. Easier now. I've done more work around it, but it's trying to get him off. He wants to cling on to me because it's also in venom that makes me use.
Yeah.
Every time I've used drugs,
venom's
been the one in control, because again, it's that power. It's that do that drug, feel that confident, get that ego.
Because you're looking for the mirror image of something that's validating.
Yeah. And so I do my best, when I now am triggered, which is very rarely now. I've managed to create a quite peaceful life for myself in recovery. So it is very rare, but I am still aware of the kind of behaviours. And Mr. Robot, again, is something that I only use when I need to. I did a lot year one of recovery. But Mr. Robot is basically my guardian. He's my logic. So, the pain, again, it's a trigger, but the pain I'm feeling now, I want to use on. It's not the same as venom. My reaction is way more wounding, way more inner child pain, mainly around rejection or abandonment and all of those wounds. And so Mr. Robot is basically the guardian that goes, we're not ready to feel this yet.
Yes.
And it's now I'm going to take over and I'm going to think everything through logically.
Yes.
And navigate via logic, not emotion.
Yeah.
Like I have been in situations where I should be bawling in tears and I'm just staring people in the face going, okay, but that's no worries. Well, we can sort that out. And they're like, why aren't you giving any emotion? And I've done it in man cave meetings as well, and they're just like, what happened there? Like, why wasn't there? And I was like, it's just a coping mechanism. And the reason why is because that pain is so severe, I really struggle when I cry. If you notice, when I went to go then, I stopped myself very quickly. That's also because when I used to cry, I would escape by using.
Yes.
So I used to sit in my office looking at a picture of my son, crying my heart out, and the only way I could stop crying was to use drugs. So now I stop myself from crying not to use drugs. It's again a mechanism that Mr. Robot helps me with that.
Shows how powerful just certain, even crying could be a trigger for someone that's an addict.
Yeah.
Because it's where the venom bit wants to come up to protect you from being that vulnerable part. Because that's all it is. It's the brain's wired for survival. It will protect you from what it sees as vulnerability, because vulnerability comes with threat. You know, the threat to your survival. If you're vulnerable as the primitive version of us, and let's face it, the primitive brain is the chimp, and it is, let's say, 10 times stronger than the logic at certain times, especially if
Chimp Paradox.
Chimp Paradox,
Brilliant
book. And it's for anyone listening that's not read it, it's a great starter into understanding yourself. And I believe the writer of that, Professor Steve.
Yeah.
He's you know, Ronnie O'Sullivan. He's who worked with Ronnie O'Sullivan for Ronnie O'Sullivan to get over his depression and his anxiety, become the greatest again.
And for anyone who doesn't know, he done a podcast with Steve Bartlett.
Yes, he did. That's right. So you can go and listen to that. Yeah, I think it's Professor Steve.
I can't remember his name. It's Professor something. The Chimp Paradox.
Stephen Peters.
Something like that. Yeah. Patterson. Peterson.
Steve Peterson.
Or you're on about Jordan Peterson?
I have no idea anymore. Just Google the Chimp Paradox.
Chimp Paradox, you'll find out who it is.
I'm trying to be clever, it just never works. That's the ego.
Yeah.
No, but I think ultimately it's just understanding that your brain is always going to try and protect you from what it perceives to be a threat. And I think for a lot of men, and this is why it's great what you're doing with, and I know you're doing the lodge as well for the women, so we don't want to take away from that. But as a man, talking about your own story and starting with the man cave and going into the lads app, it's so powerful. And I know you do this all the time with the men in the groups, and I know you do it all the time in your own way in privacy, but it's so powerful to put yourself out there publicly as well, because I know from putting myself out there publicly, talking about being sexually abused, one of the things that happened for me when I started putting myself out there and more recently is that people didn't believe what I was saying was true. They were like, well, I don't. So what did someone say? An actual comment was, when I was speaking about being sexually abused, she's a wrong 'un.
Fucking hell.
And the comment was, she's a wrong 'un. And then it was like, yeah, I'm not buying this either. I'm like, I am talking about my dad sexually abusing me publicly. And I'm doing it. And I tell you why I did it. Same reason you're doing it, which is when I was growing up, nobody was talking about these things. I had no frame of reference. To get a book back then, you didn't have Audible or Amazon. You had to go to a library, and there really weren't any books on this subject. Not only that, but the services, the therapy services, hence the reason I became a therapist, they were shocking, and they gaslit me. I remember talking about my story, and I was self-harming at the time, and the woman was so vile to me that it made, and I know you should never pass blame, but she genuinely did make me feel worse. The GP that was dealing with me, they were taking some stitches out of me. The nurse was lovely. She was really sympathetic, and her eyes were like kind eyes. The GP basically told me, paraphrasing, but I was wasting his time.
Jesus.
I was taking up resources, and he knew my history because he had my notes. So I really want to just sometimes think, how can I, for a 13-year-old, 14-year-old girl that may be, or a boy that's been sexually abused in their own home, if they came across a clip of a podcast or a soundbite or a book or a post, and they were like, oh my God, that's me, then they know that they're not the problem, because somebody else has been there and they've seen me through a set of eyes where, well, she didn't deserve it. Maybe that makes them think, well, neither do I. And with what you're doing, it's the same. If someone's hopeless and they're thinking the only way out is to take more drugs or to try and take their life, or the only way to be seen or heard is to do a suicide attempt, or they feel incredible guilt or whatever it is, and they hear you and they go, oh my God, 2 years in recovery. Yeah. And he's done all of this. Now, not everyone that is, and that's my next question before we wrap up, because I think this is really important, and I really want to shine a light on the greatness without boosting the ego too much, because we know
I want to say something as well before you move on. So you go first.
Well, you say first.
Right, I basically was going to say, like, what you're doing is amazing. You know, your story and the things that you've done and are doing are incredible. And you are right. It's speaking publicly about that is going to give someone that hope. You know, we spoke about it before, and I don't know his surname, Josh. I don't know how to say his surname, but on Instagram is Josh FFW. Yeah, and
he's great.
Amazing. So if you ever get to see it, please reply to my message.
Yeah, and I do share his stuff sometimes, and he does reshare it. So maybe I'll just go into his DMs.
He's incredible, but he was a massive influence on understanding my relationship with my parents and the reason and the talk, because he does a lot about toxic
parenting.
parents.
He's brilliant.
And he basically gave me the confidence to cut mine off.
And I've done the same, not necessarily because of that, but because I realised that I had toxic parents.
Yeah.
He did.
But I didn't realise I had toxic parents
until
until he explained it in a way that I related to.
Yes.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like people like him, who's also 10 years, I think he's 12 years now in recovery. And
he does breath work as well, doesn't
breath
he?
work. Well, again, he's one of my guys that I really want to get involved with the Lads app, along with you and Anna Lee and other people. But without you talking about sexual abuse, without him talking about toxic parents, without me talking, and don't get me wrong, I'm no way near, what you guys are, or in terms of like having that audience, but I will, and I don't do it for that. It's purely,
you're doing it with people in real life as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's face to face. I'm seeing
connection.
These guys. I'm giving them hugs. I'm telling them it'll be okay.
You are so imperative to their recovery, whatever they're recovering from. Because it's not just about addiction, like you say at the beginning. The Man Cave is not just about addiction.
Well, you use drink and drugs drink and drugs is your solution. They're not your problem.
Exactly.
The problem is your mental health. It's your trauma, pain. It's your wounds. It's your pain. Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to have the likes of Josh and some great people out there. I can't think of them all.
There's so many to name.
There's so many that I am so grateful for. Because although I do this too, and you do this, I'm still moved when I see somebody else talking because I go, because the imposter thing comes up. And when people tell you, we've been called attention seekers through self-harm, suicide attempts, drinking, alcohol, whatever. And when people say that to you and you're a young person at the time, it stays with you. And I have to question sometimes, is this my ego pushing this narrative? Is this me being a therapist because I want to be appreciated and validated?
Yeah.
Is this me putting my story out there because I'm a narcissistic, horrible human being?
It's a checklist I go through all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And so I know neurologically why I share this. I know psychologically why I share it. I know from the clients that I work with directly and the messages that I receive that it is having the desired effect, i.e. a few people that have reached out to me have disclosed abuse for the first time in their entire lives and they feel safe to do so. And I will always say, I'm not here to help you. I'm here just to be a safe space and to reflect back at you the love that you've always deserved. That's really what my job is.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm skilled enough to give them more than that, but that's really the fundamental. And I wanted to ask this question. This was my question because you're doing all of this now with Man Cave, with Lads App, with The Lodge. You're continuing this journey in as many different ways as you can. You're continuing to try to be the best parent and co-parent with your ex the best way that you can. What makes you different? How are you able to dig deep and to try and create something which highlights the light instead of the pain, or instead of just the pain?
What makes me different?
Yeah, like how are you able to go to that place where actually, instead of it just being all about the pain, it's about what you can do to maybe, we spoke about suicide prevention earlier.
Yeah, I think I can go there because I found compassion and empathy for myself.
Thank you. They were the words I was hoping you would say.
I found compassion and empathy for my past, what I've been through, for my inner child, which is a process of, I'm still healing him.
Do you love him, the inner child?
I think I don't ever view it like that. I think you put me on the spot. Do I love him? I'd like to think I do. I can't feel it. I feel sorry for him. I'm helping him. Like I would help a member of the Man Cave. I'm helping him get on his feet again.
If you saw a boy that was 9-10 years old.
Well, I did. My son.
Okay.
It messed me up.
Right.
It messed me up when I saw him at my age.
Yeah.
Which is, so in rehab, Will, one of the, I think he was more like the art therapist.
Yes.
He had this real zen about him.
Yeah.
He was incredible. And it was the only session I'd done with him. It was the other kind of psychotherapist, but he took me and the group through a visualization of our inner child.
Yeah.
And it was basically, like a, God, how do you even explain it? Like them World War II bunkers?
Yes.
You like lift the hatch.
It up, yeah.
And it's guarded. So it's this like circle kind of hatch on the floor with like a prison window.
Yeah.
But it's
down.
Not, yeah, it's down. And it's being guarded by these, I can't see them, but they're like demons.
Yeah.
Like that's all I can explain it. And it's visualization. And the demons moved out the way and let me look in, and it was this broken 9-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Because that's where my mum left.
Yeah.
And it was cut, it was wet, it was damp, he was completely broken. And
what did you feel for him when you saw him?
At that time I had to tell him, because I was only in daycare then. Yeah. The protective bubble of rehab wasn't there. Right. I had to drive home. Yes. I had to be faced with the real world. Yes. And I was like, we can't, if we want to do this type of work, I need to check back in. Yeah. I need to become residential, because there's no way I'm leaving. And
open wounds.
I've only done that process again once. So my inner child is a long process of healing and loving him and helping him. Yeah. I do it in shadow work. Again, I can have empathy and compassion for him. Mm-hmm. But is there that connection with my heart? Probably not just yet. So with my logic again, because it's the Mr. Robot thing. This is painful. I feel sorry for you, mate. Yeah. But it's very Mr. Robot-esque. Yes. Do you see what I mean? It's not.
Do you do heart-mind connection work, like the meditations, hypnotherapy, that sort of stuff?
Meditation is something I've always struggled with. Actually, the first time I ever really got something from guided meditation and breathwork was with Daniel Beckett.
Legend. Love Daniel.
Amazing guy.
I absolutely adore Daniel.
Yeah. And thank you, Daniel, because he connected us, didn't he?
Yeah, he is, because of Daniel.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal. And Heather, his other, I don't know if you've ever met Heather.
I think she was at the event, because he held a whole event for Manco.
I know he did. Daniel is a magical human.
What a guy. I want him on the app as well.
Yeah, I want Daniel on anything and everything I ever do.
Yeah, he's
big
amazing.
Up to the Daniel Beckett.
He is absolutely amazing.
He is amazing.
Even everyone that was there was like, that guy's energy is just incredible.
He is a beautiful, magical. Yeah. I can't even call him a human because he's out of this world. But so's Heather. So's Heather. They're just such gorgeous human beings. They really are. But yeah, the inner child work. So he's great as a facilitator. Phenomenal as a facilitator, but I use hypnotherapy for that. And as I said to you earlier, I've got this combination now of hypnotherapy with bilateral work with the EMDR, and honestly the inner child work there is profound, because you're using the brain's ability to process emotions with the EMDR, but you're going deep into the subconscious at the same time. And I think when you love your inner child, when you can say I love, like that heart-mind connection, it is, you're certainly not recovered, but you have this other dynamic, which if you've already got all of this in place where you're able to do such good work already in your recovery, that dynamic, once that clicks...
Well, that's the next step.
Yes.
So obviously these 2.5 years that I've been clean, for the majority of that I've been going through divorce. Yes. I've been dealing with being separate from my kids. Yeah. I've been having to focus on my recovery. Yeah. I've been doing therapy. Now, while I did stop therapy for a long period of time, I am looking to pick it back up. Because again, it was just too painful to be doing that whilst everything else running a business, and it was just too much. And learning how to deal with my feelings without drinking drugs to escape. But when I didn't have drinking drugs, I went through a food addiction. I went through a bit of a porn addiction. There was all these other things I was reaching out for.
It just moves, doesn't it?
It completely moves. And now I've got to the place where none of that exists, and so now I'm looking at all types of healing medicine wheels. Yeah. Because I still can't bring myself to do ayahuasca. No, and I would advise you didn't at this point. Not at this point, and it's also for the fact that I don't think I ever will. No, I don't think it's for everyone. Not a lot of people do think like this. They don't count their clean time. Yeah. They don't value it. It is everything to me.
Yes.
Absolutely everything. Don't get me wrong, I don't look as often as what I used to, like in my first year or whatever, and I probably clock it every couple of months. And I only really celebrate it every 100 days now, where it was a lot, you know. But I do. And if I don't care, I don't know what it is, but say 910 days, I think it's around that figure. I value that with my apps. It is my life. I am only here because I have that. If I lose that, so that's the reason why ayahuasca, being DMT, I'm like, I don't think I could do that.
Not everybody, and most people, and again, I've been invited to do it myself, and I very much like you value feeling very much in a healing space. I feel very much grateful for that. It enables me to do my job. It enables me to be creative. It enables me to focus on my businesses. It enables me to be energized. It enables me to be the mother I need to be and the person I need to be. I've heard so many stories of people going to the darker places and actually still having so much anxiety and so, and then they will say, oh, this was a bad trip, this was a great trip. For some people that have done it, they've had a phenomenal experience. I'm not sure that I will ever want to do ayahuasca.
It's difficult because I've seen people who have done it and I'm like, wow.
But then have you seen the people that have done it that have had the awful experiences? Because I have.
I've also seen people who have done it who I would say are not, it's not had the same benefit to those others who I've seen. Let's put it that way.
And people who say they feel full of love, but they've had a really difficult experience with it.
The thing I don't like is when I watched a video on it and it's the guy that did it said it's like doing 10 years of therapy in a weekend, and I'm like, not. Bullshit.
It's not.
I call bullshit on it every single time because so say if you were to take away the tactical breaks from therapy, I'm probably just over 3 years of a weekly session, sometimes double sessions, and it's like, I don't think I'm even at the beginning really of my therapy journey.
No.
I think because I also view therapy as like an MOT on a car.
Yeah, checking
in
all the time,
maintenance.
So do
and
I.
Again, it's a big practice at the man cave, is that maintenance thing, and with things now that I have the capacity for, and other introductions of other ways of healing.
Yeah.
Because again, why? I'm never going to become complacent in my recovery or fear of relapse. So why should I ever become complacent in my healing? Because
it's so true.
How do I know what levels I could get to and what doors it will open and what connections it will make? And, you know, in order for my mission to support my mission, how can I best serve my community if I'm only going to stick to 3 years of psychotherapy? Well, because I'm clean. Yeah. Ego, go back to therapy, check in with yourself, you know.
And that's a really good point, because actually when people do these mushroom experiences, I will say this as we're talking about it, because I've got to be very, very ethical with this.
Of course, yeah.
More
than I can be.
Well, yeah.
More than I need to be.
Well, yeah, I have to be so ethical. So what I'm going to say here is I don't have a problem with plant medicines, mushrooms. Personally, I think there's a hell of a lot of research going on now. There's a lot of information out there. If someone wants to do it, go to a place where it has the psychotherapeutic integration. Because you can go to places in the Netherlands and actually all over the world, but in the Netherlands in particular, which is probably closest to us, where they have those facilities. I'm not saying that some people wouldn't have had amazing experiences on mushrooms without psychotherapeutic interventions or integration, But if you're new to the game, I mean, it's not cheap, but go where they do the psychotherapeutic integration, because what you're getting is the experience with the more shamanic healers, but you're also going to get the clinical psychotherapy. And that then enables you to have a broader spectrum of experience with it.
Yeah, I'm very biased though, because that's what
I know.
Like I say, I owe my life to therapy. I owe my life to Ricky. So I do sometimes say that because he taught me how to view myself in ways that I never knew were possible.
Psychotherapy is awesome.
Unbelievable.
It's awesome for the therapist, because we get to do, I think, the best job in the world.
Absolutely.
The most rewarding job in the world. But the types of psychotherapy out there, you know, again, taking it off of the psychotherapists themselves, that personality is really important for you to bond with them. But the things that we've learned and the training that we've done, the hours and hours and hours of the people before us that came up with these theories, it's so bloody, it's the most, again, I'm so privileged to do this work.
Yeah, and it's an amazing career. Like, I even kind of was one of those, like, oh, do I go into that? I couldn't do the education. I'm just not that way inclined. But
you're doing your bit anyway.
Doing my bit, but I say to everyone, go to therapy. One of my best pals in rehab now, and I went to visit him recently, and he's like, mate, you've been saying it all along, go and get psychotherapy. And he's starting to say some things that, you know, and I don't want to come across preachy, because that's my journey, and other people have healed or done a particular healing journey a different way. But for me, I don't see there being
no replacement.
There's no replacement for what. And the thing is, and I'm going to talk to Ricky about it actually, you've mentioned different types of psychotherapy, and I wonder which ones
he's trained
Ricky has used with me to get me, because I do have a really, really good understanding of all of my trauma's connections to things like Venom, Mr. Robot, and they've all come from him. Like,
it could just be that that's his brain.
Yeah.
It could just be that he's brought in those elements. I would say, for me, I was multi-model trained in psychotherapy. So I covered a lot of models. But then I started to be more interested in the trauma recovery stuff.
Right.
So then he will be the same. He has to do a certain amount of hours of CPD. So you're then doing the extra training on top of the training you've got. So he will have picked up loads over the years.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested to see what he's used
I'll let
with
you know. I'll let you know. But I think the thing what I now see in therapy is what you just touched upon, is people give up before they find their one.
Yeah, you're right.
Because I had to go through quite a few.
Yeah.
And I'm not scared to spill my feelings. It was just them and their energy. And they were a right fit for someone.
Yeah, of course.
But a lot of people go, oh no, I tried and it didn't work.
They tried one person.
Well, you tried, you didn't like them, you didn't go back, you didn't try to find another one.
It's like restaurants.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to go to a few before you find your favourite cuisine.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's not that the others aren't right, it's just that maybe you don't like spice, or maybe you're a vegetarian, whatever. You just got to try a few out.
Absolutely.
Maybe, I mean, I would say that if you find the one straight away, great. Like, if you feel good, it's energy, isn't it? You just know. It's a relationship, you see. It is a relationship.
Well, at some points, he was my only constant.
Yeah.
In a world that was burning down around me, he was my only constant, and he was also the only one who he might not have. Oh, he did show empathy.
Yeah, he did. Of course he did. He would have
did
given
show
you
empathy,
love.
even if it was through his eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, he would go, bloody hell, mate, that was a lot.
He
was the
validated
only
you.
one on a constant basis that validated me and showed me
in the
empathy,
healthy way.
compassion, in the healthy way.
In a healthy way, because obviously it's a relationship with boundaries.
And made me hold space for others, and made me see what it was doing to the children as well, and what it was doing for the children. He kind of has, actually looking about it, he's kind of set that kind of foundation to what I now take into the cave.
Yeah. He'll be a massive.
He's integral to me being here.
I know he is.
He's hugely
Ricky,
integral
you did a good job, my friend. I don't know Ricky, but I feel
legend.
like I know him.
He's a legend. He's actually, so the guy, because we haven't even kind of come onto the cave part yet. So the one friend I had, Zach, is his therapist.
Oh, wow.
So Zach is now, I think he's just about to celebrate 5 years clean.
Wow.
This April. He went to the rehab that I went to. He was like, this is the rehab I went to. This is the therapist I've used. And he just went, go. And then when I split with my ex, he put me up. But he was the only kind of friend that I really had at that point. And me and him went to Dubai to celebrate, because I said, as soon as I reach a year clean, I'm jumping out of a plane.
Yeah.
I'm skydiving. It's always been a thing that I wanted to do. It was so good that we went back that new year, and I wasn't in the right frame of mind, and I said to him, look, I'm pretty depressed. Like, this is all well and good being in a beautiful country, like eating lovely food and whatnot, but it means nothing. My mental health is shot. I just found a lump in my groin. I was being tested for lymphoma.
Oh my God.
Obviously that was the height. It was Christmas. I wasn't spending Christmas. Christmas is when my mum left. So I've always got this thing about Christmas.
Me too.
I was in a very bad way. So I went, right, I'm going to look for a mental health meeting. I said, I don't want to go back to recovery because I don't want to go, hi, my name's Scott, I'm an addict. I know I'm an addict. I don't need to tell everyone that I am. I know I am.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about how I'm feeling today.
Yes.
Rather than that kind of war stories. And I couldn't find one. I didn't want to set one up. My mission was not to set one up. My mission was to go to one. I didn't set the man cave up.
This is what makes you different. Remember the question, what makes you different? What makes you different is when you were searching for something, you couldn't find it, and your brain, being the way it is, said, right.
Fuck this, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to swear.
No. That's what I was looking for, really.
Well, I knew I couldn't be the only person suffering because I see people, on a weekly basis that are recovering and they've got great clean time, but they're struggling.
Yeah.
I've got people who, have had cancer, in remission. They put everything on the line physically, but neglected mentally.
Yes.
And then now they're having to deal with that mental side of things.
Because it's a trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. The stories are absolutely incredible. Finances in today's kind of economic climate.
It's one of the biggest reasons for suicide, isn't it? Finances in men.
Yeah, gambling. We've got gambling addicts. We've got drug addicts. We've got literally a big one is abuse.
Yes.
And that I can't say his name, and I wish I could. I'd need his permission first, but I think when I talked to him on Monday, he was like, "Oh, you definitely could have shouted me out for that." But there is one guy in the cave who he had pretty much no one, and he came to the cave, and the first time in a long, long time, he found a set of friends. And one time, he shared about his abuse, and ever since him sharing about his abuse, there are now more and more people going to him, because they identified with him and talking to him about the same situation, very similar to you. Yeah. And it's people like him that are the reason why I don't want the man cave to be about me. Yeah. Because it's about the work that these guys do and how vulnerable that they get in order to speak their story that gets other people ready to speak their story. And I love the boys. I think they're amazing, man, and all the community.
But you're seeing the reflection of yourself as well, the healed or healing version of yourself. Yeah. You're seeing that reflection of yourself, and that's what you needed all your life, I think. Yeah. You needed to see this part of yourself.
I always knew I'm big on law of attraction. I'm big on manifestation. I'm big on all of that. I always knew that even during those times where I was stuck in a hotel or I was on my knees or I thought there was no hope, there would always be this glimmer of, if I don't die, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I will get better. Yeah. And I never gave up. I never gave up even though I think it was more subconscious. Yeah. I think consciously I'll be like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. But subconsciously there was always this fight. And that's another reason, like, well, what's the point of me going through all of that and then doing nothing with it? What's the point? Yeah. All right, great, I'm okay, but that's not who I am. I need to help people. I need to, and when I say help, it's just purely facilitating. I'm not, and again, included in that is the partnerships that we've got, the venues that hold that space for us, and the partnerships that give up their time to... Yeah,
because people are volunteering for this. This is a non-profit.
It's all non-profit. Every single person that helps out volunteers. Yeah. And we raise money by...
But you facilitated all of that.
Yeah.
You did that.
Yeah.
Because you were looking for something that you couldn't find.
So I created what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's, I think, where the little boy got lost... I think that was always your potential. Yeah. And I think if you would have had, and again, we could say this as parents where we've made mistakes. So again, not to vilify, because I don't ever want your family to think that I'm doing that. I have all the empathy in the world for people's pain, and I understand it. But if we all could give our children even if we've made mistakes, the space to know how beautiful they are, the space to know they're loved unconditionally, the space to know that they don't need to abandon themselves because of what we're doing. We can explain what we're doing. And even though their brains may not be able to fully understand it, one day they'll remember, oh, my mum, did this thing, or my dad did that thing. But they explained to me that was their pain.
Yeah.
It was never mine. It's that accountability, but it's also... Never think your children are too young, even if they're 2 or 3, to hear you take accountability, to hear you explain, this isn't about you, this is about me. You are loved exactly as you are, no matter what you do. And if you tell them off sometimes and you feel like you've lost your temper with them, you can still do that. You can always say that. You can always be humble. Yeah. And I think that's really a generation thing. We do that more now because we know more now about neuroplasticity and the way the brain forms. Your parents didn't.
No.
But you somehow showed up for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's what I always will do.
Yeah.
I always, because there's a kind of famous saying in the recovery world, if you don't put your recovery first, everything you love will come last.
Yeah, so
and
true.
It's so true. And that's why, like what I explained before we started shooting, the situation with the, working and all these projects, and I didn't have the emotional capacity to be as good a parent as I could have for my son. I had to kind of go to him this week and say what I said and how I reacted was my stuff. It's me being under this pressure and whatever. And I said to his mum, like, can you help, because you're better suited in that way. And it's that's what recovery's taught me. It's taught me to go, that's not failing.
Correct.
That's actually you succeeding for him and putting yourself first, because now you need to go focus on all of the bits to find balance in order to get that back for him.
I say this to every single person I've ever worked with at some point or another in their therapy with me. If you don't prioritize yourself, the rest of it will fail. It's not selfish, it's self-full. Because if you can be self-full, everything that you give to your kids, everything that you give to your colleagues or to your business or your partner, it's coming from a place of fullness, not emptiness.
Never heard of that. Self-full.
I think I made it up, to be honest, because I've said it to everybody.
TM or TA, whatever.
Register, copyright, patent.
Copyright it, yeah. No, I've never like selfless or selfish. I've never heard self-full.
I did
but it's
that.
kind of like filling up your cup and then letting everyone have what's left over.
Yeah,
it's the same thing, right?
Because I know this myself. If I feel, there's been times I get back from work at about 10:30, 11, and my daughter might still be awake, and she'll come downstairs and we'll have a little chat, and I'm eating my food and I might not have eaten for like, I don't know, 13 hours. I'm starving. It's usually just a salad because it's quick to put together. And I'm thinking, can you just stop talking so I can eat and like rest and digest and all that? And I never say that to her, obviously, and I would always prefer her to talk to me than not. But I know that what I'm giving in that moment, because I'm like, I'm so hungry. I've been working for 13 hours. Please just let me have this moment. I would never say that. But I know when I show up to the table, like, so tell me about your day. The energy is so different. Yeah. And I want to give that all of the time. I think if I can self-prioritize, like 90% of the time, I'm doing the best that I can do at this moment in time. And when you do that, you give a better energy to everybody else. Yeah. So that was a good move for you to do that. Yeah. That was a good move.
Yeah. Well, again, I see them regularly. I still spend a lot of time with them. And they know, because ever before I got clean, I was always open with them. When I was in rehab, it was Daddy's not well.
Yeah.
It was Daddy's going to fix his head when they were little.
Yeah.
And I've always spoken to them, but now they're a little. Well, my youngest is just about to turn 9, and my son's 12. We can talk. I'm depressed. I'm feeling this, and then I talk to them about their anxiety as well, because the crazy thing like Ted going into secondary school, was faced with this anxiety, and his behaviour is again a coping mechanism. I feel like he's
masking,
going down a very similar road to what I did, but that is the reason why I am so kind of hard on it, because I'm like, don't. That road isn't good. Please don't go down that road. Let's try this road. But I've got to recognise that I've got to allow him to follow his own journey.
But you know what? Like, you're talking to him about emotions and feelings and depression, anxiety. You didn't have that.
No.
And also, if he does go down that road, if he happens to be predisposed to any sort of addictive behaviours or feelings or whatever, you're not going to do what people did to you.
No.
It will be a very different story for him. It will not be the same.
No, it won't be. And I will, yeah. That's the one thing I've always said, actually, is if any, or, you know, any of my two do, or anyone I know,
you know,
like I know people who have relapsed and phoned me relapsed,
yeah,
and I gave them the time that I never got.
You gave them the love.
Gave them the love.
Because that's what they needed.
Empathy,
They need to be
heard.
heard.
Compassion, and gave them the support, and it will never change.
No. And that's what you are instilling in your son and your children and anyone that's around you. So although, of course, that's going to be a natural fear, it won't be the same.
No.
It won't be what you went through.
And that's what I love that is naturally being bred in the man cave, is that we had an unfortunate troll on Facebook.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with the lodge announcement, because the lodge is the women's version of the man cave, but the man cave is the holding community interest company, like a branch of. So I was on the man cave page, and someone was basically gunning me for, you know, policies, procedures, safeguarding, this, that, the other. And I said, look, we've got systems in place. We can't be who we are without it.
Yeah.
And anyway, there was back and forth. And then one of our members attempted suicide, slit his wrist and overdosed on pain medication. Not because his mental health, because of his physical health. He'd had a car crash.
Right.
He'd been pretty much neglected by the NHS.
Yeah.
He was in a lot of pain. He's like, I can't take this pain anymore.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Pain is a big thing.
Huge.
Pain is a
Absolutely
massive
huge.
problem.
We've got a few in there really suffering.
Chronic pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, I'm glad you've mentioned that because people don't talk about chronic pain and mental health enough.
No, they don't.
It's a real problem, but carry on.
Yeah, so he attempted, went to the MK hospital, and basically they, you know, dressed his wounds, got him better after a few days, sent him to the mental health team, and after a chat they gave him a man cave leaflet. And you're like, no, we're supposed to be the person before you.
Yes.
Like, you don't send him back to us. We're not equipped. We're not professionals.
That
you can't
just goes
send him
to
back.
show how, I mean, what you're doing is phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah.
But how broken the system is.
Of course. So then when he kind of came back to us, our support team, because we've basically got a support team in place that do one-on-one care, the mental health first aid trained. They just have, you know, buckets of emotional capacity.
They hold space.
They hold space very, very well.
Yeah.
And one of them went round his flat and basically spent the weekend with him on and off. He was getting phone calls from us. One of the members' wives cooked him a roast, took it round, and we got him in the Campbell Centre. And then I went back on Facebook and shared that story and said, that's our policy.
Yeah.
That's our procedure.
We love, we care, and we will be there.
We will be the people that are there for them when no one else is.
Yeah.
We are doing what other services can't.
Yeah.
And that's not something. Empathy, love and compassion and understanding and holding space, I'm sorry, you're not going to find that on any piece of paper.
No, you're not. And let me tell you something. Someone control you over that if they want. My question to that troll, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because you can be a part of this compassion, love, empathy, holding space, understanding, or you can attack the very people that are trying to make a difference. I don't really see how that's a good use of your time.
Yeah.
But, you know, people have got putting their eggs into the wrong baskets in that case.
Again, straight away I had empathy for that person because you quite clearly just wanted to be seen in a public forum.
This is the thing. This is what trolls are. When someone comments that like that, or, you know, calls me a wrong un for sharing a story or whatever, it's like, oh, this is the only time you get seen. Yeah. And I'm sorry that that's the case for you, because there's so many other ways you could be seen. And, you know, it's a hard when it feels personal. But then I always say when someone trolls you, it only highlights where you need to work on yourself. Because if you're triggered by it, which I was triggered by it.
And I was too.
Yeah, then it's just good for me to... In other words, thank you, trolls, because it shows me where I still need to do the work on myself, which, by the way, I will.
And that mine was self-worth.
Yeah.
I'm doing all, and there was one I did actually probably publicly show that I put my blood, sweat and tears into this.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you just leave it?
Yeah.
Why can't you trust
attack?
my word?
Yeah.
You know, we're in the paper. We've got so many people. We've got testimonials from all of our members.
Yeah.
We've got testimonials. We've got lovely comments from the wives, the mums, the sisters, the partners of all of these men. Why can't you also kind of
see my worth?
Again, maybe validate me for the effort. And it was the worth thing, but again, I sat and calmed down and was like, I still got that hole in me. Yeah. That self-worth still isn't where I want it to be.
Well, I think the mother wound is a really strong one. And I've got that wound as well. And I think I've had to accept, and I'm sure you've had to, that I will never, ever, certainly with my mum, because I have separated from my mum and my dad.
Yeah.
I will never have that love. I don't know what that love feels like. I will never know. I've never known with my mum or my dad.
Yeah.
And I'm still all right. I'm not saying that it's good. I'm not saying that, hey, best way to be resilient.
Yeah. Cut your parents off.
Yeah.
Cheers, Josh.
I'm not saying that's the solution, so don't quote me. But I do think there's something in it. Like, it's okay. Like, you may never know what it feels like to be loved by your mum and dad. You may never know what it feels like to have that nice sort of, I guess, 2.4 children, rose-tinted glasses upbringing, but it's okay.
It is. And again, it's funny because I was talking to Zach about this today at football. While we were waiting for kickoff, we talked about the trauma that our kind of dads went through and the kind of thing that they haven't been able to look within and be accountable and what that has reflected on the relationships. And because it's been, I think it's 5 years since I cut my dad and my stepmom off, and wouldn't change it for the world. My healing journey has gone so far without it.
Isn't it a massive thing? It's crazy.
Mental.
Honestly, we are living proof that actually once you've made that decision, you free yourself from the shackles of I'm not enough, because you've got to now do it for yourself.
Yeah, I don't have to keep constantly trying to prove that I'm worthy.
And you don't have to wait for him to validate it. You can validate yourself, even though you're still on that journey.
And I also do. There's also, when there's a kind of relationship, there's an expectation on how I want him to be. Yeah. And I don't have to put that expectation on him anymore. Or
you can't be disappointed.
No, can't be disappointed. And I think that with my mum, although I love her and I love the relationship we do have, I think there is an element, again, I quote Mr. Robot, there's an element of God that will always be there, because this was my mum and she left. Yeah. So I think that there's that kind of protection. Yeah. But I'm very grateful that I at least have one. I'm very grateful that I'm, here, clean, addiction. I'm very grateful to have gone down the road that I did, because without it, I wouldn't be who I am. I know. And I wouldn't be on this journey. I wouldn't be on this mission to try and be helping others and, putting my two passions together, business and mental health, and now trying to create this app that can help every man out there, because it's very difficult when you are a non-profit and you're only in a very small location, only seeing, big up Andy's Man Club, they're seeing, thousands. I think 4,000 men a week they see. Some incredible communities out there, but we're not at that stage, and I don't think we ever will be.
And you don't need to be, because you're more of it feels like you're a multi-platform kind of guy. In terms of they can come and see you in person.
I'm not all eggs in one basket. Yeah. So I'm grateful for it all. I'm very, very apologetic to those who I hurt along the way, but I've hopefully made my amends, and I'll hopefully continue to make my amends daily to them by staying clean and turning up for them in different ways. But good can come from bad, and darkness can come from... light can come from darkness.
Yeah, you need both for it to be a full experience. I suppose as a closing thought then, if there's somebody that's listening that's never come across you before and has never been to the Man Cave and doesn't, this is their first time of really ever having exposure to you, what would you say to them? It's the yin and yang.
Sorry, light can come from darkness.
Yeah. You need both. 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 Yeah. You need bo What would you say to somebody that genuinely has got to the point of, I don't care what anybody else says, I know that this is the end of the journey for me, like I'm out? What would you say to that person? It's a big question. I'm really sorry.
It's a massive question. If they were here, I'd actually want to listen more.
Yeah.
That's if they were here, I'd want to hear more from them. God, that's huge.
Because there were times when I suppose when you were in that coming down, and it was like I have to escape now. That's where you were at. But there must have been times when you said you always had this subconscious, it could be better. There was something, I could do something with this. I could make something of my life.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? I mean, I guess with everyone, even the darkest moments, that there has to be times where they've got that feeling too. How do you pull on that, do you think?
Visualization.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Visualization, yeah. And
create the story. Create
that vision in your mind of what life will look like without drugs or without drink. If you're a recovering addict, think of what you want your life to look like. One of my visualizations, and I always remember it, was walking. So I don't know if you know Milton Keynes very well. MK1.
I don't know brilliantly.
So MK1's like the stadium. It's got the shops, and basically I'd parked in the car park by JD, and I was holding both my children's hands to Nando's. It's our favourite meal. I was wearing a white t-shirt with a khaki bomber jacket, and it was crazy because that was when I was doing hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
They take you through the visualization thing.
Yeah.
And that was quite relatively in the middle of my journey. And about a year ago, I walked, and in the reflection of the Turkish restaurant, I was holding both my kids' hands, wearing a white t-shirt, black jeans, and a bomber jacket. We
mentioned the law of attraction. As you know, I use it.
And I just was like, I actually visualised this.
Yes, I've had that many times. That's why I love hypnotherapy, and I love
want to do
all
more
those.
Hypnotherapy.
It's great. Yeah. It's great. And I say that because from a neuro point of view, like people think of hypnotherapy as like complementary, which it is, but it actually, because you're slowing down brainwave activity to get into that more relaxed state, you're bypassing the analytical layer, not completely, but you shut that down, and you get to that part of the brain that deals with the subconscious. You go to the back of the mind, and it's there where the back of the mind is connecting to the creativity. And if you do that over and over, I say this on every episode, repetition is recognition. Neurons that fire together wire together. So you create the template, and once you've got that, you've got your sat nav, you've got your direction. You may not consciously know you're following that template or that sat nav, but you've mapped out where you're going. And instead of then seeing all the pitfalls, you'll see. It's like when someone says yellow car, you see loads of yellow cars.
Yeah.
Once you've wired that in,
the Tony Robbins thing. Yeah, he does did you focus on the red thing in the room?
Of course. So once you've done that to yourself, and you repeat that visualization over and over again, and you can perhaps use other tools to do that, so you can get creative with it, you can draw it out, you can write it out in journals. I use bilateral stimulation with it as well, so the brain thinks it's doing the emotional processing as it would when you go into REM sleep. You can use so many different tools with it, but keep repeating it over and over again. There's the sat nav. That's the direction. So when we talk about manifestation, law of attraction, again, I look at it from a neuroplasticity point of view. If you repeat something over and over again, you wire it in and you believe it, then you can achieve it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not just about luck. It's about I've drawn my map. I know where I'm going. And one day, I promise you, and you've just said that, you will see it.
It was quite weird.
Yeah.
It was like, wow.
Yes. You see it.
So for anyone out there, kind of referring back to your question, it's very difficult because I speak to so many individuals and see so many individuals. My approach with each individual is different.
Yeah.
So to kind of collate that into one is quite difficult. But I would say that have a vision. Have a vision. You know, and this doesn't need to be on a yacht with a lamp. None of that bollocks.
No.
Have a vision of what your life looks like. Have something like that involves love. It involves connection, and it involves you looking well, feeling well, and don't just visualize, feel it.
Yeah. It's the heart-mind.
Heart-mind stuff. And just know that be patient, Because that is the one thing that recovery has taught me is you need to be patient.
That's the hardest thing, isn't it?
Put the expectations down. Don't expect that because you go to one meeting or you do one meditation or one therapy session. This is a process, and it needs to become more of a lifestyle change than a fix.
Yeah.
Don't jump in a cold plunge thinking that's going to fix you. Don't go to therapy to fix you. It's all about mindset. It's a very hard question to answer.
I know it is.
Put me on the spot.
But it's a good one, and it shows you that the reason that it's a good one too is because the first thing you said, I kind of want to collate the information you just given. The first thing you said is if they were with me, I'd want to hear them. So what you've basically said is if there's no hope, find somewhere you can be heard, seen, and safe.
Exactly.
Which is what the Man Cave provides, and organisations like that, or therapists like that. Find somewhere you can be heard. And then once you've got that, it's all about how you control the mind. You need to feel safe first. You need to feel that someone's got compassion for you and love for you first. Because without that, you can't do the rest.
No.
Safety looks like compassion, love and understanding. Safety first, then you can do the tool-based stuff, which is kind of what you've said.
Yeah.
And like you say, everyone's an individual, so the way that they get... Cause some people can't visualise, by the way.
No.
Some people can't actually see a picture. So we use sensory stuff, like what does it sound like? What does it feel like? Where do you feel it in your body? So for someone to actually create the sat-nav, they might have to go through a few steps to find out how they can feel, how they can visualise, how they can sense the future. And that's why you can't answer it in a
and I don't
way.
think there is no right, or like you say, that everything you've just said and everything I've said, if you combine that, that still won't work for someone. There'll be there'll be a different rate, and I always say you do you.
Yeah.
Do what works for you. Take your time. If you need a break from therapy, if you need a break from meetings, if you need a break from work, the gym, if you just need rest.
Rest.
Create your blueprint.
Yeah.
Because my blueprint that has worked for me is mine. Yeah. And it's not going to work for anyone else.
No,
because
it's not.
people ask me all the time, how did you get clean? What did you do? What is it you do now? And what do you do? And I'm like, yeah, but that's what works for me. Okay, I'll tell you, and you might be able to take a couple of bits from it or take a lot from it, but what you'll do is use that and create your own.
Yeah.
And it's having and I learnt this, and it's really been reinforced from us talking earlier on about how I never had any conviction in my own decisions. It was always based on other people and being directed and mirroring and all of that. Don't be scared to try something and fail at it. Yeah. Because I tried a lot in my recovery and I failed, but I tell you what, I didn't try again. I learnt from it. Took it and implemented something different to create my blueprint. Yeah. But I wasn't scared. I had nothing to lose. Yeah. I was already a scumbag drug addict who couldn't fucking get a grip of his addiction. So what am I actually going to lose here by trying to get better? Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I do. One of those situations.
You had a drive.
It was a drive. I didn't want people. My story was not going to end that way. No. My story, I know how my story ends, and it's not that way. Yeah. Because I've now reached that point of visualizing my life clean and healthy, which I am. Yeah. I'm now visualizing your next step.
You've actually done, your brain has definitely created new neural pathways.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is not just, as again, I suppose to wrap this up with a bit of science, you have created...
Wrapped it up like 3 times now.
I know. I'm really bad at wrapping things up. I don't know if you've noticed. I'm really shit at that. I need to learn how to do that better. If I've learned anything today, is that
I love it though. I love a chin wag, especially this kind of stuff.
She's wrapping up again, guys.
Right, for the 4th time, let's wrap up.
We'll be here till like 12:30 midnight. No, I don't even know what I was going to say. But it's about neuroplasticity. Yeah. You have literally, because people will say, well, recovery, but what you're doing is recoveries. You are rewiring the brain. And so you will always be steps and steps ahead because you've got new bridges and new pathways and new motorways and new A45 and new this and new that. You've got all these new roads, but there's still a few that could be so there's always going to be roadworks, but you're creating a new map.
Yeah, I think I might look into hypnotherapy again. I really enjoyed that time. It was quite a long time ago now as well. So yeah, I think I'll look into that. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I want to thank you for everything you're doing, first of all.
Thank you.
And for today. And I am really excited to see where everything goes for you.
Yeah, definitely.
You're going to be that person that so many people already are looking up to within your communities and stuff, but where a lot of people can look up to and go, what, he was where I am now, and now he's doing all of this. You are already there, but that's only going to continue to grow. And I think it's a beacon of hope.
I'm recovering out loud for those still suffering in silence.
And
that's exactly what it's all about.
This is such a powerful story and such a powerful podcast. And I know it's going to be of benefit to so many people. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've loved our conversation.
Oh, so have I. That really is a wrap.
Cool.